Chapter 134. Although he was 100 meters away, Jiang Kuai still slowed down his breathing for fear of alerting them. He could not see through these people's cultivation level. Their footsteps were silent. Even if he was lying in the courtyard, he could not hear their footsteps. Their movements were leisurely, as if they were here to play. They did not show any killing intent. However, Jiang Kuai knew that these people were ruthless. Once they caught him, they would never let him live. After dealing with them for 2 years, the Rin public house's cruel methods were chilling. They silently came to Jiang Kuai's residence. Both of them glided to the top of the wall and lightly punched in the direction of the bedroom. Bang! Bang! 2 muffled sounds. Jiang Kuai saw his bedroom door and window explode. These 2 punches came from thin air. They were all grandmasters. He quickly lowered his body and shook his head at Su Yuding, signaling her not to make a sound and not to look up. Grandmaster's senses were too sharp. They could even feel their gazes on them. The moonlight was hazy, and Su Yuding's martial arts was low. She could only see roughly. The Rin public house seemed to be ruthless. This time, they sent 2 grandmasters. Previously, they only used 1 grandmaster. Now there were 2. If this continued, they would not be able to catch up. They would probably use 3 or even 4. At the same time as the 2 punches, 4 large silver nets were thrown into the air. They slowly fell down and covered the entire residence. These 4 nets shone coldly under the moonlight. Jiang Kuai felt a chill in his heart. If he was really inside, he would have become a fish in the net. These nets were obviously specially made. It would take a while to cut them. With these 2 grandmasters, his life would be in danger if there was a slight delay. It did not matter to him, but what about Su Yuding? If she fell into their hands, he could not imagine her ending. Thinking of this, he glanced around but did not see Chu Li. This time, if he did not inform them in advance, they would not be able to escape. No one. He escaped. The 4 men in black flew around and saw that there was no one in the residence. Damn it, he escaped again. He ran faster than a rabbit. How did the news leak this time? This guy is very slippery. Maybe he felt something was wrong and left early. Damn it. All our efforts are in vain. Don't worry, he can escape for a while. You won't be able to escape. In my opinion, he can't have gone far. Quickly send people to investigate. We'll find him eventually. Their discussion drifted into Jiang Kuai's ears, but he dared not make a sound. If Su Yuding wasn't there, Chu Li had appeared long ago and laughed out loud. He mocked them for a while before leaving to piss them off. However, Su Yuding was there. If he brought Su Yuding along, it would affect his body movement technique. It would be hard to say if the 2 grandmasters would not catch up to him. Old Meng, Old Qi, Old Zhang, Old Zhao, it's all our fault. One of the black-clothed men lowered his head and apologized. We rushed over as soon as we heard the news, but we were still too late. We let the 4 seniors make a wasted trip. Jiang Kuai was stunned. They actually sent out 4 grandmasters. Haha, it doesn't matter. Just take it as coming out to get some fresh air. An old man waved his hand and laughed. The scenery here is not bad. That's enough, Old Meng. You still have a nerve to say that? The 4 of us set out, yet we can't even deal with a junior. If word of this gets out, we'll die of embarrassment. Old Zhao, young people nowadays are different from the past. You can't underestimate them. Old Qian was defeated by a young man. You're talking about Chu Li from the public house, right? This brat. The public house has suffered many losses in his hands. Lady Seo has given the order to kill him. We must kill him no matter what. This brat is more difficult to deal with than the celestial monkey. We must kill him quickly. If he really becomes powerful, our public house will not have a good time. I didn't expect the public house to have such a talent. He's just a junior. He can't do anything. Old Zhang, you're wrong. If we really go against him, we really have to be careful. Don't fail miserably. Old Qian is not worse than us, right? What happened in the end? Sigh. I heard that she was injured by him. The 4 of them stood at the side and talked while the other 4 black-clothed men retracted the net that covered the residence. When they were done, the 4 old men also ended their conversation and left slowly. Jiang Kuai let out a long sigh of relief. He suddenly turned his head and saw Chu Li standing not far behind them with his hands behind his back, quietly looking at the direction where the 8 black-clothed men left. Jiang Kuai said, "They're talking about you, Brother Chu, right?" "It's me." Chu Li retracted his gaze and shook his head. "I've become a mortal enemy with the Ren public house. You've killed a grandmaster before. I was lucky." No matter how arrogant Jiang Kuai was, he knew that he could never kill a grandmaster, no matter how strong his light body technique was. A sneak attack would not work on a grandmaster. He could rely on his light body technique to escape, but he could not kill them. A grandmaster had a keen sense of danger. "Brother Jiang Kuai, what do you think?" Chu Li glanced at Su Yuding. "I think the scene tonight will happen again." Jiang Kuai's face darkened. Thinking of the scene just now, he felt a chill in his heart. Chu Li said, "There are 2 choices. Either directly join the public house and let your wife live in the public house, or don't join the public house and live in Chongming Town. If the public house has any problems, just ask Brother Jiang Kuai for help." Jiang Kuai frowned and looked at him. Chu Li said, "No one dares to mess around in Chongming Town. If anyone from the martial arts world dares to make a move in Chongming Town, the public house will hunt them down. Until now, no one has been able to escape. The Ren public house also does not dare to make a move in Chongming Town. The consequences of breaking the rules are unpredictable. Living in Chongming Town is very safe. If Brother Jiang Kuai really can't stand the restrictions, you can choose the second option." "Is there any disadvantage to the second option?" "Of course." Chu Li smiled. "Although Chongming Town is safe, the world is big. There will always be people who are not afraid of death. Every year, there will be people who cause trouble in Chongming Town. In the end, they will be killed by the public house. Living in the public house is considered safe. Once you enter the House of Marquis, the internal struggle in the public house must be very fierce, right?" Jiang Kuai frowned. "I'm afraid that Su Yuding will be bullied if she stays there." Chu Li laughed and shook his head. "It seems that Brother Jiang Kuai does not understand the public house at all." Jiang Kuai looked at him seriously. This was related to his own fate. Chu Li said, "Our public house is different from the other public houses. We have the weakest internal strife. The eldest master is in charge of the public house. The second lady is weak and sick, so she does not manage the affairs of the public house. The third lady only manages the affairs of the public house. She has no ambition and only focuses on cultivation. The fourth young master focuses on cultivation and does not manage the affairs of the public house." "The third lady?" Jiang Kuai asked. Chu Li said, "The third lady, Xiao Qi, is in charge of the punishments in the public house. Moreover, the public house is a huge lake. With Brother Jiang Kuai's cultivation level, you can enter the public house and become a rank 6 protector. You will have your own courtyard and no one will disturb you. You will have more freedom than you think. Is there no place that is not free? If you're a rank 6 protector, you will have 6 missions a year. Other than that, as long as you follow the public house's rules, there are no other restrictions." Chu Li smiled. "You can choose the missions. It will not be forced. Then everyone will choose the safe missions. Who will do the dangerous missions?" Jiang Kuai was doubtful. Chu Li smiled. "The reward for the safe missions is low, and the reward for the dangerous missions is high. The difference is 10 times or even 100 times. In the public house, no one will do the safe missions. The more dangerous the missions are, the more people will rush to do them. They are conceited about their martial arts. They like adventure and excitement. They want to stimulate their potential to improve. They like money and pills. Brother Jiang Kuai, you should understand that it is not that no one wants to enter the public house. It is just that the threshold of the public house is higher than that of the famous sections. If it was not for your light body technique, you would not have the chance to enter the public house." Jiang Kuai hesitated. It was actually so wonderful. Chapter 135. What are the benefits of being a protector? Jiang Kuai asked. He felt that most people who practice martial arts could not stand being restrained. It was too frustrating to listen to others' orders. There must be great benefits for people to do it. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. There are no other benefits. Jiang Kuai was surprised. Chu Li said, there are no other benefits besides stability. It can't be? Jiang Kuai frowned. If there are no benefits, who will be ordered around. Chu Li smiled. Maybe there is a benefit. You can get promoted. Promotion? Jiang Kuai muttered. Chu Li said, just like my glories will courtyard, you just joined. Of course, you have to start from the lowest level. If you do well, you can go up. People who practice martial arts are not officials. Jiang Kuai snorted. Chu Li smiled. Just like the glories will courtyard, they have a scribe commander, protector commander, and deputy commander. If you become the commander, you can naturally order others around, but do everything personally or just give an order and someone will naturally do it for you, which is more comfortable. Jiang Kuai shook his head. Power was a great temptation. How many people could resist it? Chu Li said, all right, brother Jiang Kuai, my lips are dry. Just give me a straightforward answer. Are you going to enter the public house or not? Can I trust you? Jiang Kuai said, don't try to trick me into joining. Chu Li laughed. To be honest, if I wanted to harm you, do I need to talk so much? Why did I need to inform you? I could just watch from the side. Moreover, I treat you with sincerity. If not, I only need to make a move when they succeed. Brother Jiang Kuai, won't you be grateful? Do you still need me to persuade you? Jiang Kuai showed a smile. This made him trust Chu Li even more. If Chu Li was playing a trick and waited until he was in trouble to lend him a helping hand, then out of gratitude, he would not have anything to say and would immediately agree to it. Husband, why don't we enter the public house? Su Yuding said softly. Jiang Kuai looked at her. Su Yuding could see that her husband was moved, but he could not bring himself to say it. She could only say it. Even if he would blame her in the future, she could not care so much. This was a rare opportunity. Yuding, if we really enter, our days might not be as good as now. Jiang Kuai sighed. Su Yuding smiled and said, as long as we are together, anywhere is the same. Chu Li smiled and said, brother Jiang, the danger in the High Duke's public house is far less than what you are now. Sigh. Jiang Kuai let out a long sigh. Slowly, he said, fine, I'll enter the house of High Dukes. Chu Li clapped and smiled. Congratulations, brother Jiang. You won't regret it. Jiang Kuai shook his head. Who knows? There are countless people who want to enter the High Duke's public house, but how many of them can actually get in? Chu Li laughed. Brother Jiang, you don't know how lucky you are? Let's set off now and return directly to the mansion. No problem. Jiang Kuai agreed immediately. In the early morning, a thin mist rolled over the surface of the lake like a veil. Chu Li breathed in the fresh and moist air and stepped into the stargazing tower. Suru was standing in the main hall. Her apricot yellow gown made her face look like white jade. She smiled like a flower as she looked at him. Have you succeeded? Chu Li smiled. Fortunately, I didn't fail you. All right, all right. Suru waved her hand. Hurry up and go see Lady Xiao. She has been waiting for you. The two of them went up to the third floor. Xiao Qi was sitting cross-legged on the bed to meditate. The cast on her left arm had been removed. From the outside, no one could tell that she was injured. She gently closed her eyes. She was solemn and quiet, like the goddess of mercy sitting on a lotus. As soon as Chu Li stepped into the third floor, she opened her eyes. Chu Li took out the jade box and handed it over with both hands. Lady Xiao, the longevity grass. Suru took it and brought it to Xiao Qi. Xiao Qi said, open it. Suru opened the box. Inside was a green grass. At first glance, it looked similar to ordinary weeds, but it was 4 to 5 times thicker than weeds. The exuberant green revealed vitality. At first glance, one could tell that it was not an ordinary thing. Now, second, eldest sister can be saved. Xiao Qi sighed softly. Chu Li shook his head. It's useless. Xiao Qi glared at him. Chu Li said, with the vitality sealing finger, even 10 longevity grass can't save second lady. Shut up, Xiao Qi said lightly. Big brother doesn't want to hear this. Chu Li sighed and nodded helplessly. His words carried little weight. His medical skills had only been learning from Yulin for a month. No matter what, he could not win people's trust. Lady Xiao, I've recruited Jiang Kuai in the public house. Chu Li said. Xiao Qi opened her eyes slightly. Suru smiled and said, really? Someone like Jiang Kuai can be recruited? Chu Li smiled and nodded. He's different now. He has a wife, so he wants to live a stable life. He also offended the Rin public house and was almost punished by them. Jiang Kuai's light body technique is superb. He's a useful talent. Xiaoqi nodded slightly. It's a great achievement that you can recruit him. Chu Li smiled. It's a pity that he can't be used by me. Go and rest. I'll handle the rest, Xiaoqi said. Chu Li fist saluted and turned to leave. Xiaoqi looked at the longevity grass and felt the vitality. She knew that it was not fake. She closed the box and went to Iron Eagle Island. The public house was particularly lively in the morning. It was livelier than usual. Boats came and went on the lake. She and Su Ru stepped into the backyard of Iron Eagle Island. Xiao Taiying was cultivating in the backyard. His palm energy was spreading and his whole body was purple. There was no one beside him to serve him. Seeing Xiaoqi coming, Xiao Taiying was surprised and stopped cultivating. She must have something to do to come at this time. Big brother, the longevity grass is back, Xiaoqi said. Xiao Taiying was stunned and overjoyed. You found it. Xiaoqi glanced at Su Ru. Su Ru held the jade box with both hands and presented it to Xiao Taiying. Xiao Taiying opened the jade box and suddenly laughed. It really is the longevity grass. He could not help but caress the jade box. A warm and cold feeling came from his palm. It calmed him down a little. He sighed. God never forgets man. Second younger sister can be saved. Xiaoqi nodded slightly. Truly found it? Yes. Good boy, you're really good, Xiaoqi said. But Chu Li insisted that second elder sister was hit by the vitality ceiling finger. The longevity grass is useless. Xiao Taiying snorted. He's really stubborn. Xiaoqi shook her head. Forget it. Let's not care about him. Let second elder sister consume it as soon as possible. Yes, yes. Xiao Taiying smiled again. Let second elder sister consume it in the morning. He closed the jade box excitedly and said, This boy is really good. I can't not reward him. It's a little too fast to rise another rank. Third younger sister, what do you think we should reward him? Didn't you want to rise a rank before? Are you going back on your words? Xiaoqi frowned. If it's someone else, it's not a big deal to rise a rank. But Chu Li is now rank 4. It's already shocking. It's not good for him to rise again. Xiao Taiying shook his head. I think it's okay. Xiaoqi said coldly. All right, since you insist, then let's rise a rank. Xiao Taiying said helplessly. What reward? There's a piece of tiger bone in the public house. Xiaoqi said. Give it to him. Spirit tiger bone? Xiao Taiying showed a pained expression. This big brother really can't bear to give it to him. Let him enjoy it for a while. Xiaoqi said. What's the use of the spirit tiger bone? Xiao Taiying was hesitant. He asked doubtfully, Is he going to eat it? This thing can't be used as medicine. Chapter 136. Xiaoqi said, He cultivated the art of white tiger portrait and needs to understand the spirit tiger's force. He dares to touch the bone. Xiao Taiying shook his head. Don't mess around. He's a talent. Don't ruin it. His art of white tiger portrait is already quite mature. With the tiger bone, he will improve further. If not, I'm afraid he will stop here. What a pity. All right, he can even cultivate the art of white tiger portrait. He's lucky to have both parts. Xiao Taiying sighed. He had cultivated the art of white tiger portrait before, but he could not grasp the basics. Now, it seemed that Chu Li's talent in martial arts was amazing, comparable to third younger sister's. It was a rare talent and worth cultivating. As the eldest son of the House of High Dukes, Xiao Taiying would not be jealous. He admired Chu Li even more. It would be a sin not to make full use of such a talent. If the House of High Dukes wanted to be strong, they had to make good use of these talents. Big brother, Xiaoqi said, There's no use for the tiger bone. It can't be used in medicine, and I don't even dare to touch it. Why not give it to him? He can use it? Xiao Taiying said, If he touches it, I'm afraid he'll be finished. He has a deep dermic base and is sensitive to danger. He can avoid danger. Xiaoqi said, Big brother, you can't bear to let it go, right? Who said I can't bear to? Xiao Taiying waved his hand and scoffed. All right, give it to him. Xiaoqi smiled. Xiao Taiying let out a long sigh and suppressed his heartache. But you must make it clear to him that this is not a joke. Of course. Xiao Qi pursed her lips and smiled. Big brother, you really can't bear to let it go, right? Co. Taiying stared at her. You're making fun of me. How did this tiger bone come about? Who knows? Co. Taiying shook his head and sighed. I asked my father before, and he said he didn't know either. Maybe there's only one spirit tiger bone in the whole world. Xiao Qi said. Co. Taiying laughed. It must have been brought out by an enlightened master from Mountain Shirwan. Maybe there's a few of them. If you bring one more, you'll attract the spirit tiger, Xiao Qi said. Even an enlightened master wouldn't dare to do that. What if there are a few enlightened masters? Big brother, don't mention it. That's why tiger bones are hard to come by. Co. Taiying shook his head and sighed. But Chuli was able to find a longevity grass and save second sister's life. This is far more important than a piece of tiger bone. Xiao Qi nodded. The two of them chatted as they walked out of the back garden and into the main hall. Before Co. Taiying sat down, he raised his voice and called out, Lin Quan. Lin Quan. Young master. The white-haired old man, Lin Quan, appeared and said with a smile, Young master, what can I do for you? Bring me the tiger bone from the inner warehouse. Co. Taiying said. Yes, Lin Quan replied. He turned around and left. Co. Taiying pointed at the armchair, and Xiao Qi sat down. Xiao Qi pondered for a moment and sighed. Big brother, what if Chuli is right? What? Co. Taiying was stunned. Then he thought of it and shook his head with a smile. Vitality? Sealing finger? Xiao Qi slowly said. Chuli is very confident in his judgment. Co. Taiying shook his head and said, It seems like you are trusting him more and more. This is not a good thing. No matter what, he is still a subordinate. Don't trust him completely. I understand. Xiao Qi nodded. She was very clear about the art of manipulating people. Human nature was evil. They cannot be trusted completely. Co. Taiying said, If it's really vitality sealing finger, then find someone to undo it. It's not a big deal. Xiao Qi frowned and pondered. Vitality sealing finger was not that easy to undo. Lin Quan quickly returned to the main hall and presented a small black box with both hands. It was about the same size as a jewelry box, young master. Co. Taiying took it and passed it to Xiao Qi. This is the tiger bone. Remember to tell him clearly not to touch it. Yes, Xiao Qi replied. He's not that stupid. I'm just afraid that he's arrogant. If he's not convinced, if he really touches it, he will die no matter how powerful he is. Co. Taiying scoffed. Xiao Qi smiled and said, Big brother, Chu Li recruited Jiang Kuai into the public house. Co. Taiying was stunned and his face darkened. Xiao Qi said, Big brother, how do you want to deal with Jiang Kuai? Co. Taiying took a few deep breaths. Before today, he even had the intention to skin Jiang Kuai alive. The longevity grass was recovered and his anger was mostly gone. However, when he heard Jiang Kuai's name, he was still a little uncomfortable and angry. Xiao Qi said, Is he expelled from the public house? Nonsense. Co. Taiying glared at her. His light body technique is superb. If he can be recruited into the public house, of course, we can't let him go. Xiao Qi nodded lightly. Chuli really has some skills. Co. Taiying scoffed. Jiang Kuai is so arrogant. It's not easy to be recruited into the public house. Xiao Qi said, He can see through people's hearts and find their weaknesses to break through their defenses. Don't rush to arrange it. Let Jiang Kuai choose himself. Co. Taiying said, Chuli will definitely convince Jiang Kuai to join the Glory's Wool courtyard. Xiao Qi smiled. It's very possible. Lin Quan served 2 cups of tea and bowed to the side. Xiao Qi said to Lin Quan, Lin Quan, you're getting on in years. Go to the martial arts hall and be a high official. Lin Quan smiled. Thank you for your concern, third lady. I'm a wretch. Once I rest, I feel uncomfortable. My hands and feet are still nimble. Serving young master is the most comfortable. Sigh. Xiao Qi shook her head. Co. Taiying smiled. I'm really not used to not having Lin Quan by my side. Those girls are clumsy and an eyesore. Xiao Qi said. Those girls are not as thoughtful as Lin Quan. Second eldest sister should find someone. With that temper of hers, who would she like? Co Tying sighed helplessly. Xiao Qi shook her head. How could she not have a personal maid to serve her? It's too inconvenient. Co sure did not have a personal maid by her side. She only had a group of maids to serve her. She had a strange temper and did not like people around her. She liked to be alone. Although it was leisurely, there were many inconveniences. If she had Su Ru, she did not have to worry about some trivial matters. Su Ru could handle it for her, and she could focus on cultivation and handling the public house's affairs. It was too tiring to order her about trivial matters one by one. However, second eldest sister was happy with it. The few maids around her are quite capable. She can't stand other people. It's useless to send someone over, Co Tying said. Xiao Qi gently nodded. Co Tying's eyes suddenly widened. Third younger sister, you're not thinking of transferring Lin Quan to second eldest sister, are you? Big brother, are you willing to do that? Xiao Qi pursed her lips and smiled. Co Tying quickly shook his head. No. Then forget it. Big brother, I'll give second eldest sister the longevity grass in the afternoon. I'll go first, Xiao Qi said. Go. Co Tying impatiently waved his hand. Her words messed up his thoughts. He looked at Lin Quan and shook his head. No matter what, Lin Quan was a man. Even if he was old, he was still a man. Second eldest sister's personal maid must be a woman. Chu Li was cultivating in the pagoda, visualizing the art of White Tiger. Xiao Qi and Su Ru pushed open the door and entered the pagoda. They sat in front of him. Su Ru placed the black box on the stone table. Chu Li closed fist saluted and curiously looked at the black box. You've gone up another rank. Rank 3. There's a spirit tiger's bone in here. Don't touch it, Xiao Qi said. Tiger's bone? Chu Li was surprised. Xiao Qi gently nodded. This is your reward for retrieving the longevity grass. It should help you cultivate the art of White Tiger. Chu Li gently opened the black box. The aura was like a ferocious tiger pouncing on him. Chapter 137. Xiao Qi smiled faintly. Initially, she only needed Su Ru to send it over, but she was worried and wanted to personally remind him to not let him be reckless enough to take the risk and meet with an unexpected mishap. After they left, Chu Li returned to the gazebo and slowly opened the black box. The murderous aura surged out like a tidal wave, as if it had transformed into a ferocious tiger pouncing on him. It was frightening, and he could not help but want to turn around and run away. Chu Li reached out his hand and slowly approached the tiger's bones. He stopped a foot away from it. The cold air seeped into his body. His meridians and muscles felt as if they were being pierced by countless cold needles. It was extremely painful. He pulled his hand back and stared at the tiger bone, feeling the killing intent from it. Just a piece of bone was already so powerful and murderous. He could vaguely imagine how powerful a living spirit tiger would be. The sun-cultivating White Tiger portrait required this kind of monstrous power. The more powerful the visualized White Tiger was, the stronger and purer the power transmitted from the void would be, and the more powerful and pure the sun-cultivating White Tiger portrait would be. Xueling was instructed by Chu Li to help Jiang Kuai and his family settle down. She let Su Yuding stay in the guest house first, and then brought Jiang Kuai to the public house to handle the formalities. Her white robe fluttered in the wind, and her temperament was like ice and snow. She rowed the boat and brought Jiang Kuai to the martial arts hall. On the training field in front of the martial arts practice hall, the guards gathered in groups of 2s and 3s, sparring with each other or cultivating by themselves. Some practiced with the saber, some practiced with the sword, some practiced with the palm, and some practiced with the fist. As Xue stepped onto the shore, the bustling martial arts field slowly quietened down. The crowd made way for Xue to pass through the middle without having to make a detour. Xueling's jade face was solemn. She nodded slightly as a form of greeting to the crowd. Jiang Kuai followed beside her and was stared at by hundreds of people. So many unfriendly gazes made him very uncomfortable. After passing through the crowd, Jiang Kuai secretly heaved a sigh of relief and whispered, "Miss Xueling, What happened to them? Shui said calmly. My master is known as the youth champion. Brother Chu is so impressive. Jiang Kuai was surprised. Shui Ling scoffed arrogantly. Master, you earned your title as the #1 master through fighting. They all respect you. He's really powerful. Jiang Kuai sighed. He could tell that there were quite a number of innate masters among these people. The strength of the High Duke's public house was indeed shocking. Shui walked gracefully. He brought him to the martial arts hall, explained the reason, and helped Jiang Kuai get his waist tag. This is only the lowest grade of the guard's waist tag. We need to challenge the ranking tower, Shui Ling said. Let's go, follow me. The ranking tower? Jiang Kuai asked. Shui Ling said, the protectors in the public house only care about their martial arts and nothing else. The number of floors of the 9 ranks tower that they have passed is the rank of the protector. It all depends on one's own ability. Young Master Jiang, there is no need to hold back. The higher the rank, the higher the salary. A difference of 1 rank means a difference of several times. All right, Jiang Kuai nodded slowly. He had just entered the public house. If he wanted to gain a foothold, of course, he had to show off his abilities. When he saw so many innate masters in the martial arts field, he felt pressured. The 2 of them arrived in front of the rank 9 bronze tower. The towering bronze tower exuded cold air and light under the sunlight. His aura was powerful and oppressive. This is the ranking tower. Shui Ling raised her head and looked up. Every time she looked up, she could not help but feel humble. Master Jiang can enter with the waist tag. Miss Shui Ling, please wait for a moment. Jiang Kuai strode into the ranking tower. Shui Ling stood quietly in front of the ranking tower. The bright sunlight shone on her body warmed her, but her body was surrounded by a coldness that could not be dispersed. Her temperament was cold. In addition to cultivating the crescent cryptic, she always gave people a sense of coldness. As the crescent cryptic became more profound, the coldness on her body became stronger. Getting close to her would feel like immersing in a cold spring. There was no intention of profanity. Her personality was also affected by the crescent cryptic. She became colder and more indifferent. She did not care about anything. Her mind was completely placed in the small courtyard. Only in the small courtyard could she relax. When she was outside, it was as if her heart was wrapped in a layer of ice. It was difficult to move. 2 hours passed quickly. She suddenly raised her head and saw Jiang Kuai slowly walking out of the bronze door. His face was pale, and it was difficult for him to walk. Shui Ling took out a bottle of pills and passed one to him. Are you hurt? I'm tired. Jiang Kuai smiled bitterly. Shui Ling said, this is a vitality pill. It recovers inner energy. Thank you. Jiang Kuai took it and swallowed it happily. He shook his head and smiled bitterly. It's really powerful. How many floors did Master Jiang pass? I didn't pass the 5th floor. Oh, then you passed the 4th floor. Rank 6. Amazing. Shui Ling praised. You're able to get a rank 6 on your first try. It's rare. You have a bright future. I won't be able to pass the 5th floor in a short period of time. Jiang Kuai took the vitality pill. Soon, hot air spread all over his body. He could not help but feel refreshed. The feeling of weakness was immediately dispelled. He secretly sighed. The vitality pill was far better than the pills he had taken. It was indeed the public house. Shui Ling smiled. Rank 6 is powerful enough. 800 taels of silver a month. Brother Chu is rank 4, Jiang Kuai said. Shui Ling shook her head. Master is a scribe. His salary is far worse than a protector's. A rank 4 scribe. Brother Chu is more powerful, Jiang Kuai said. Shui Ling said, Master has made countless contributions. Master Jiang, let's go to the small courtyard that you're staying in. They first picked up Su Yuding, who was staying in the guest house. Shui Ling rowed the boat and sent Jiang Kuai and Su Yuding to a small island. The island was full of green and surrounded by willow trees. The willow branches fluttered in the wind, and the air was full of vitality. The 3 of them got off the boat and walked on a path surrounded by flowers. They arrived at a delicate small courtyard. Shui Ling pushed open the courtyard door. Master Jiang, Madam Jiang, This is your residence. Both of you can go in and have a look. If you're not satisfied, you can change to another room. Jiang Kuai smiled. Can I choose a courtyard? Shui Ling said, there are many courtyards in the public house. You can't choose all of them. Both of you don't have to rush. If you're not satisfied after staying for a while, you can change to another one. There are so many courtyards in the public house. Jiang Kuai asked doubtfully. Shui Ling said, there are many courtyards built in the public house. In addition, many protectors don't live in the public house, so it's very spacious. It's fine not to live in the public house. Shui Ling nodded. Protectors are very free. As long as they follow the public house's rules and complete their respective tasks, they can live wherever they want. Isn't the public house afraid? Jiang Kuai frowned. There were too many loopholes in this practice. The public house seemed to be defenseless and did not look strict at all. Shui Ling said, Master Jiang, are you worried about the public house's safety? Yes. Jiang Kuai nodded. Shui Ling said, Master, don't worry. Our public house is different from other public houses. It's built on a lake. There are many small islands, and each island has its own weaknesses. If anyone wants to attack, I guarantee that they won't be able to leave. Jiang Kuai was skeptical. Shui Ling smiled. Since the public house was built, there have been many attempts to attack the public house, but none of them succeeded. Why is that? Jiang Kuai asked. Is there a master guarding every island? Shui Ling said, Of course there are masters guarding the island. It's unpredictable, and only the third lady knows about it. It's a secret. I see. Jiang Kuai nodded slowly. Su Yuding entered the small courtyard and looked around. There was a flower garden, a bamboo forest, and a small pagoda. It was quiet and pleasant. The decorations were very elegant. The furniture in the house was antique. The style was simple and natural. At first glance, one could tell that it was made of expensive wood. It was made by a master craftsman. There was luxury in the simplicity. Su Yuding liked it at first glance. She smiled. Shui Ling saw that they were satisfied, so she helped them find a maid to take care of their daily life. Jiang Kuai officially became a protector of the public house. He could go to the martial arts hall and make some friends. Chapter 138. Master. Shui stepped forward and called out softly. Chu Li turned to look at her. Is everything arranged? Shui was shocked, and her body froze. His gaze was like a cold sword piercing into her body. She felt like she had fallen into an ice cellar and could not move. Chu Li noticed that something was wrong. He retracted his gaze and waved his hand. I'm sorry. Are they staying? Yes. Shui let out a sigh of relief. Her heart was pounding. The feeling just now was too scary. Chu Li closed the black box. How many floors did Brother Jiang Kuai pass? He's a rank 6 protector now. Shui said, his martial arts is very powerful. Where did you find him? Chu Li laughed. Brother Jiang Kuai is the famous celestial monkey in the martial arts world. It's normal for him to reach rank 6. Are they satisfied? I think they are. Shui said, Madame Jiang especially likes him. Chu Li nodded. Go visit them often. After all, it's their first time here and they need help. It's hard to take care of them with just one maid. Yes. Shui said, should I get 2 more people to help? No need. Chu Li said, they'll slowly get used to it. All right, you can go. Shui pointed at the black box. What is this? Tiger bones. Chu Li smiled. Don't touch it. You'll die if you touch it. Master, you were so scary. I was fighting with its murderous aura. You came at the right time. Do you still watch the tiger portraits every day? Of course. Shui nodded. She felt that watching the tiger portraits was very effective. She was getting more and more courageous. She no longer felt guilty and short of breath. She was also much calmer. More importantly, she felt that she could push her inner energy faster. Chu Li nodded in satisfaction. I'll get another one tomorrow. Thank you, Master. Shui knew that these tiger portraits were treasures. Most people would not be willing to show them to others. Chu Li waved his hand. Shui went into the kitchen to cook. Ever since Jiang Kuai entered the public house, Chu Li did not show up. He sat in the small courtyard and looked at the tiger bones. He felt the murderous aura and strengthened the tiger visualized in the sun, cultivating white tiger portrait. He could feel the power coming from a void, getting stronger like a raging wave. He wanted to devour himself. His body was getting stronger, his strength was increasing, and his speed was getting faster. The power of the sentient menace had also increased by a lot, as it was enhanced by the sun cultivating White Tiger Portrait. The infinite azure, see, easily stacked 5 times. Chuli sighed to himself. This piece of tiger bone had helped him a lot. He always had the urge to touch the tiger bone, but there was always a warning in his heart, telling him not to touch it or his life would be in danger. He believed in his intuition and had been suppressing his impulses. He only watched and sensed at close distance, but never touched it. When Chuli was free, he would help Shui Ling with her cultivation. His progress was extraordinarily fast. The biggest drawback of the crescent tactic was that it took a long time to activate, but in front of his powerful mental energy, the crescent tactic could be easily activated without any hindrance. With his help, Shui Ling's 1 day of practice was equivalent to a month's worth of practice. After a month, she had already broken through her acupuncture points and completed her acquired mastery. She was only 1 step away from the innate mastery. Shui Ling was a little impatient. She could not reach the entrance. She could not find the path to the innate realm. She knew that the innate mastery was an iron gate. 8 out of 10 people would fail before the innate mastery. She was only able to reach the entrance of the innate mastery so quickly because of Master Chu Li's help. If she were to rely on her own cultivation, she might not be able to reach this stage even after 8 to 10 years. Thinking of this, she was not in a hurry. She took her time. She could always find the entrance. Early in the morning, Chu Li finished his cultivation and sat in the pagoda. He took the jade cup from Shui Ling and suddenly pointed at the stone block opposite him. Sit down and talk. Shui Ling sat opposite him. Her snow-white gown was spotless. Her face was as white as jade, and her eyes were as bright as the lake. She looked at him curiously. "Master," Chu Li said, "are you stuck at the entrance of the innate mastery recently?" "Yes," Shui Ling said helplessly. "I can't reach the entrance no matter what. I can't feel it at all." She had asked Zhaoying before breaking through to the innate mastery, there would be an inexplicable feeling. She could vaguely feel the existence of the entrance. She could not feel it all. It seemed like it was still far away. Chu Li said, "Your heart is not calm. It's hard to feel it." "Then how do I calm down?" Shui Ling asked. Chu Li smiled. "When you don't think about the innate mastery, then you can calm down." "How is that possible?" Shui Ling shook her head. She had always wanted to break through to the innate mastery. She thought about it day and night. No matter what, she cannot give up. Chu Li said, "With your personality, it's hard to break through to the innate mastery." The more stubborn one was, the harder it was to calm down. If one's heart was not calm enough, and the degree of calmness was not deep enough, then one would not be able to reach the entrance and find the path to innate mastery. The reason why the innate mastery was hard to break through and blocked most people was not purely because of one's aptitude. It was also because of one's temperament. When one really gave up on the innate mastery and let go of his stubbornness, his heart could truly calm down. The degree of calmness would be deep, and the entrance would naturally be revealed. However, if one gave up immediately and had no desires, then one would not be able to reach the innate mastery. Searching hard, giving up dejectedly, deep despair was like giving up hope. This moment was the state of extreme yin and birth of yang. It was the best time to see the entrance and embark on the path to innate mastery. The deeper the degree of searching, the deeper the degree of calmness when giving up. It was just like the enlightenment of Buddhism. If one did not search hard and gave up directly, the degree of calmness would not be achieved. However, this best time was fleeting. Very few people could grasp it. This was the reason why there was no guidance to break through to the innate mastery. If it was said in advance, then one would not be able to reach the state of extreme yin and birth of yang. They would not be able to break through to the innate mastery. Therefore, it could not be said because it would be harming the other. Moreover, Chu Li was the only one who could come up with this conclusion. Most people entered the innate mastery without knowing how or why they entered. Chu Li had a different way of thinking from this world. His Buddhist base was profound, and his observation of the mysterious state of mind was meticulous. He had seen through the mystery of innate mastery. Chu Li could enter the innate mastery without any hindrance. It was not because of his state of mind, but because of his profound meditation. His degree of calmness was extremely deep. With a little exploration, he found the entrance and stepped onto the path to innate mastery. Shue's personality was firm and persistent. She would not give up no matter what, so she would not be able to enter the innate mastery. Chu Li could not just watch her walk around like a blind person. It would be futile. If she relied on herself, she would not be able to enter the innate mastery even after 8 to 10 years. Shue was not convinced. Master, then I can't enter the innate mastery? Chu Li said, if there are no accidents, you won't be able to enter. Why? Shue asked. Chu Li smiled. Shue bit her red lips. Master, then can you help me? Chu Li laughed. Shue rolled her eyes at him. She believed what Chu Li said. Moreover, she did not have much confidence in herself. If he said that she could not pass, then it would not be wrong. However, looking at his expression, he could help her. She could still care about her pride and face in front of others. However, in front of Chu Li, she had long thrown away these things. Chu Li said, all right, I'll lend you a hand. Shue was overjoyed. Thank you, master. Let's go to my quiet room. Chu Li got up and left the pagoda. He went to the west room of the main hall. The two of them sat on the couch. Shue sat cross-legged, her hands forming a mudra. She looked solemn. Chapter 139. Shue could only feel her heart sinking. It was as if she had fallen into an abyss. Slowly, she sank to the bottom of the abyss. Her vision was filled with darkness. Time seemed to have stopped. She did not know how long she had been in the darkness. Her brain froze, and so did time and space. She did not know when she woke up. There was a dot of starlight shining in front of her. It was twinkling like the stars in the night sky. She moved her mind, and an idea came to her mind. She went closer to the starlight. As she got closer, the starlight turned into a ball of light. There was a door in the light. She could not help but focus and enter the light door. Then a loud bang rang in her ears. All 7,800 acupoints in her body were opened. She blended with heaven and earth. She was the mountain, the sea, and the earth. Activating the difficult crescent cryptic became smooth and smooth. She continuously absorbed the energy from heaven and earth. The feeling of fullness and vigor filled her body. She wanted to scream to the sky to relieve the joy in her heart. She opened her bright eyes. Her eyes flashed and slowly retracted. Thank you, master. Chu Li had already retracted his finger. He smiled. Your comprehension is not bad. Shue immediately smiled. Master, am I an innate master? Chu Li nodded. Shue sighed. So this is the innate master's boundary. It's really different. She felt that her cultivation level had increased by 10 times. The inner energy of the crescent cryptic flowed continuously like a river. There was a huge amount of power in her body. It was as if she could break the sky with one punch. Chu Li said, practice the darkening palm for the next few days. Consolidate your cultivation level. The feeling of omnipotence is just an illusion. Yes, Shue quickly agreed. Her feeling of floating disappeared. She calmed down. It seemed that this feeling of omnipotence was a normal phenomenon. It was not unique to her. Innate masters were not invincible. Chu Li waved his hand. Shue stood up and left. She left Chu Li's quiet room and went to the courtyard. She began to practice the darkening palm. She felt the difference in an instant. The darkening palm was performed more smoothly and naturally. There were some parts that she did not understand before. Now that she understood it, her palm technique became more and more smooth. It was light and elegant. As she performed it, her body quickly cooled down. The inner energy could be transferred through objects. It was indeed different. The power of the darkening palm could be fully unleashed. The power of the darkening palm had several layers. The first layer would slow down the opponent's internal energy and movement techniques. Once the opponent came into contact with her internal energy, they would be frozen. The next layer would freeze their heart and kill them instantly. The next layer would hurt them invisibly. A trace of extremely pure internal energy would destroy the balance of the entire body's 5 viscera and 6 bowels. The imbalance of yin and yang would be fatal. In the following days, other than going to the martial arts hall to visit Madame Jiang, she also spent her time in the courtyard practicing martial arts, becoming more and more adept at practicing the mysterious yin palm. On the other hand, Chu Li had been observing the tiger bones, condensing his aura and increasing the effect of the art of white tiger. As the tiger's aura grew stronger, his body became stronger and stronger. His strength and speed continued to increase, and he sighed inwardly at the power of the sun cultivating white tiger portrait. The sun cultivating white tiger portrait was indeed an ancient lost art. It was said that the ancient lost art could fight against the spirit beasts without falling into a disadvantageous position. In the end, the spirit beasts were driven into the 100,000 hills. From then on, martial arts declined day by day. Chu Li speculated that the spirit beasts entering the 100,000 hills might be the root cause. Without the oppression of the spirit beasts, the potential of human life and death could not be stimulated. More importantly, martial arts were born from the spirit beasts. However, people nowadays did not know what the spirit beasts looked like, nor could they feel the aura of the spirit beasts. Instead of drawing a tiger, it became a dog. Hence, the power of martial arts was greatly reduced. The enlightened mastery's boundary was getting harder and harder. If one wanted to step into the enlightened mastery's boundary, he might have to enter the 100,000 hills. However, the spirit beasts ran rampant in the 100,000 hills. Anyone below the enlightened mastery's boundary would die. To survive in the 100,000 hills, one would need the luck of the heaven and earth bell. Chu Li thought to himself that his luck was not bad. Otherwise, he would not have reincarnated into this world. He retained the memories of his past life and cultivated the omniscient mirror. However, he did not dare to take the risk and enter the 100,000 hills. Unfortunately, the knowledge from his past life was still useless. All that was left was the way of thinking that was different from this world. In the early morning, Xueling saw Chu Li studying the bone in the pagoda. She knew that he would study it for the entire morning and would not pay attention to anyone. So, she left the courtyard and sailed to the martial arts hall. She wanted to look for some secret manuals to read. After stepping into the innate mastery's boundary, her vision and feelings were different. She had a different feeling when she looked at the secret manuals. The breeze caressed her face, and the surface of the lake was clear. She wore a bluish-white gown and leisurely sailed on the lake. After a quarter of an hour, she stopped the boat and docked at the bustling martial arts field. Her clear eyes swept across the crowd and saw Jiang Kuai in the crowd. Jiang Kuai had a lot of experience, and he had the ability to talk to people and ghosts. In just a few days, he had completely integrated into the public house's protectors. He made a few friends and went out to drink from time to time. They put their arms around each other's shoulders and lived like a fish in water. Xueling admired Jiang Kuai's smoothness. He could put down his pride. He was a top-notch master, and his light body technique was unparalleled. If it were her, she would not even bother with those guys. Even Master could not be like Jiang Kuai. He did not like to talk, and this was not very likable. It was difficult for him to hang out with others. As soon as Xueling stepped into the martial arts field, everyone's eyes focused on her. Jiang Kuai strode towards her and smiled. "Miss Xue, why do you have the time to come over today? Where's Brother Chu?" "Master is busy." Xueling shook her head. "Brother Jiang, are you doing well?" Jiang Kuai was in high spirits and smiled. "I found a few like-minded people. It's not bad." "All right, Miss Xue, can you help me take a look? What kind of mission should I take?" He was wary and repulsed by the public house. He had no choice but to come in because of his wife. After coming in for a few days, he realized that he was making a fuss out of nothing. He thought too highly of himself. These protectors were not mediocre. They lived freely and came and went as they pleased. As long as they completed enough missions and did not violate the public house's rules, they could do whatever they wanted. No one would care. They could even go out and play for a month or two without a problem. This was because the mission statistics were calculated at the end of the year. He had been studying what kind of mission to take these few days. He could not do the business he used to do. He spent money like water, and he needed to have some income. The reward for each mission was very high. If he took one, he would not have to worry about food and drink. Moreover, it was uncomfortable to be idle. Shuai Ling said, "You can find a patrolling mission. It's safe, and you can familiarize yourself with Chongming Town. It'll help you adapt to the public house faster." Patrolling? Jiang Kuai pondered. There were many patrolling missions, but there were only a few people who took up patrolling missions. It was very quiet. Most people did not want to take up this kind of mission that was not exciting and the reward was not high. Shuai Ling glanced at him. "Brother Jiang, you think patrolling is boring?" Jiang Kuai smiled. "Everyone doesn't like this mission." Shuai Ling said, "That's true. They're used to doing exciting missions. Patrolling missions are really boring. After 10 days, it's not as good as a day outside." Jiang Kuai smiled. "What's so special about patrolling missions?" "Nothing." Shuai Ling shook her head. "All these years, there are very few people who are stupid enough to break the law in Chongming Town. Patrolling the town is similar to a night watchman, so the reward is not high. Actually, it's to take care of the protectors. Some protectors are tired and don't want to go out and experience hardships anymore. They want to live a stable life, so they just take up this mission. The public house is really considerate," Jiang Kuai praised. He gradually felt that the public house was generous and generous. The way they handled things was admirable, and people were willing to serve them. It was far from being as overbearing and oppressive as he thought. Shuai Ling smiled. "Brother Jiang, you're new here. It's better to start with the easy missions and slowly familiarize yourself with them. There's still time. There's no need to rush." Chapter 140. He admired himself for being able to write 9 chapters. He had worked so hard that he had vomited blood. Moreover, he had caught a cold and was exhausted. He also hated himself for it. There were 2 types of writers. The first type was talented. Their writing flowed like a spring. They didn't need to think too much. They just needed to write casually, and it would move people's hearts, making them unable to stop. The other type was untalented. No matter how much they thought or how elaborate they were, their writing was like lukewarm water. They couldn't move people and could only intoxicate themselves. I belonged to the category with no talent and low comprehension. I had been writing for so many years, but my level was still very average. I struggled bitterly. If it wasn't for the fact that I loved writing and everyone's support, I really wouldn't have been able to persevere. Life was too difficult. Since my writing was average, I had to put in more effort if I wanted to get monthly votes. That was why I had to put in so much effort. Every time I saw the Almighty writing 1 chapter leisurely and his monthly votes skyrocketing, I hated myself for being useless. But no matter how much I hated myself, that was the reality. I couldn't change it. If I wanted monthly votes, I had to write with all my might. Who asked me to be useless? There was no shortcut. Looking at the monthly votes rising like a snail, I felt that I was just like myself. I climbed too slowly and couldn't stop. I had to work even harder. The new book monthly votes ranking was too important to a book. It was an opportunity to show off. If I couldn't get into the top 10, people wouldn't know that I had a new book on the shelves and wouldn't come to read it. That would be even worse. Therefore, I could only beg for monthly votes to get into the top 10 and appear on the ranking. That was why I gave it my all and wrote 9 chapters. Otherwise, it would be even worse. My results would be terrible, and I would really have to starve. Chapter 141. Jiang quieted things swiftly and decisively. He closed fists, saluted, and bid farewell to Shuai Ling. He entered the main hall of the martial arts hall and accepted the task of patrolling the city. In the evening, he arrived at the yamen of Chongming Town and saw more than 10 protectors of the High Duke's public house huddled together, talking to each other in groups of 2 or 3. Jiang Kuai was very familiar with 2 of them, so he went over to them. "Young Jiang Kuai, you also accepted the task of patrolling the city?" A middle-aged man greeted Jiang Kuai. Jiang Kuai smiled. What a coincidence. Brother Hu, you accepted it too? Hu Ziwen patted him on the shoulder. I'm old, and I like this kind of mission the most. As for you, you're so young. Why did you accept such a boring mission? Hu Ziwen's appearance was ordinary, but he was very conspicuous in the crowd. This was because his figure was thin and long, and he looked very fragile. However, his eyes shone brightly, and one could tell at a glance that he had a profound cultivation base. He was an innate master. Like Jiang Kuai, he was also a rank 6 protector. He looked like he was in his 30s, but he was already in his 50s. When martial arts practitioners stepped into the innate boundary, they would look much younger. An 80-year-old would look like he was in his 50s, or even a 100-year-old would look like he was in his 60s. Jiang Kuai smiled. I'm new here, so I'm taking this mission to familiarize myself with the environment. That's true. Hu Ziwen nodded. That's a good idea. Don't be greedy or impatient. Take it one step at a time. There's still a long way to go. There's no need to rush. Jiang Kuai smiled and nodded. Yes, there's still time. Hu Ziwen glanced around and smiled. I see that Miss Xueling has been taking care of you. Could it be that you are related to her? I have nothing to do with Miss Xueling. Jiang Kuai waved his hand. Hu Ziwen squinted at him. Who would believe that? Miss Xueling is a cold beauty. She pushes people thousands of miles away. Which protector in the martial arts field dares to strike up a conversation with her? Is it that scary? Jiang Kuai could not help but laugh. He did not notice that although Xueling's temperament was cold, her expression was cold as usual, and her eyes were indifferent. She was very gentle towards him and his wife. She was not as cold as she looked on the outside. Hu Ziwen scoffed. Anyone who tries to strike up a conversation with Miss Xueling is embarrassed. Miss Xueling is amazing, isn't she? No matter how powerful she is, no one dares to be presumptuous. That's true. The manners rules are strict. No infighting. Jiang Kuai nodded slowly. What he felt the most during this period of time was the peace of the House of High Dukes. Unlike what he had imagined, everyone was very harmonious. It was as if he stood aloof from worldly affairs, which really surprised him. How could such an atmosphere create fighting spirit? Without competition, where would the motivation come from? The house rules do prohibit internal strife. Hu Ziwen shook his head and said with a smile, But Xiao Jiang, you can't be that naive, right? Do you really think you can withstand internal strife? Everyone dares to violate the public house's rules? Jiang Kuai was surprised. As far as he knew, the manners rules were strict, and the third miss was ruthless. Anyone who dared to violate the manners rules would not be let off. It was said that 10 guards had offended her, and their martial arts were all crippled, and they were expelled from the manor. I wouldn't dare to violate the mansion's rules. Hu Ziwen smiled and said, But it's not that there are no alternatives. You can issue a challenge and have a public duel. The manor's rules allow it. Jiang Kuai nodded. This meant that infighting was allowed, but there were limits. He felt that this was not a bad idea. Blindly forbidding fighting would instead cause conflicts to accumulate. Those who practiced martial arts were hot-blooded and hot-blooded. How could they not fight? Suppressing one's nature was not a long-term solution. Hu Ziwen said, Everyone can't do anything to Miss Xueling because she has a strong background. Oh, Jiang Kuai smiled and said, What background does Miss Xueling have? Chu Li. Hu Ziwen laughed. Don't tell me you haven't heard of Chu Li's name. Chu Li is really that famous? Jiang Kuai smiled. Xiao Jiang, don't play dumb with me. Hu Ziwen pointed at him. 2 people came over and looked at Jiang Kuai. Who doesn't know Chu Li? Hu Ziwen introduced 2 people to Jiang Kuai. They were Zhao Jing and Chu Aoyan. He then smiled and said, Chu Li is now a rank 3 scribe and the chief of Gloriesville Courtyard. Do you know what Gloriesville Courtyard does? It's nothing. He was just favored by the third miss, and he was lucky enough to make a few contributions. Chu Aoyan scoffed. He was thin and tall like a cheetah. His eyes were bright and exuded ambition. Xiao Chu, I can't stand people like you. Hu Ziwen scoffed. Lucky? Can you beat Zhuo Feiyang if you're lucky? Chu Aoyan pouted. He had nothing to say. He was defeated by Zhuo Feiyang in 1 move. It was embarrassing to think about it. Hu Ziwen's words were like poking at his scar, but his cultivation level was not high enough. He could not fight Hu Ziwen, so he could only shut up. Hu Ziwen pouted. The third miss has always been fair. If Chuli didn't make those contributions, he wouldn't have reached rank 3. The Gloriesville Courtyard is responsible for investigating traitors. Who wouldn't have a headache after hearing about it? We have a clear conscience. He won't try to frame us. The third miss will not allow him to do that. Chu Aoyan scoffed. Hu Ziwen scoffed. There's no need to frame you. He's just deliberately torturing you. What can you do? So, Xiao Chu, you better keep your mouth shut. Don't cause trouble for yourself. Hee hee. I don't think Chu Li is that narrow-minded. Jiang Kuai said. Hu Ziwen smiled. That's true. He also climbed up from the bottom. He was mocked a lot back then, except for Zhuo Feiyang, who always looked for trouble with him. Now that he's been sent to a corner, he doesn't look for trouble with anyone else. Chu Aoyan scoffed. Isn't that narrow-minded? Other than Zhuo Feiyang, did he touch anyone else? Hu Ziwen smiled. If it was you, would you be so magnanimous? The one with the surname Gu didn't have a good ending either. He asked for it. Even a good person wouldn't forgive him. Sigh. The Chuli now is beyond our reach. Hu Ziwen shook his head and sighed. With him as her backer, who would dare to offend Miss Xueling? Do they have a death wish? Miss Xueling is too cold. It's useless to talk to her. Chu Aoyan shook his head. Hu Ziwen smiled. If we can form a relationship with Chu Li, then we'll be able to live a good life. So, Xiao Jiang seized the opportunity. Jiang Kuai smiled and did not say much. Chu Aoyan looked at him. You know Chu Li? Hu Ziwen said. Xiao Jiang and Chu Li have a good relationship. Really? Chu Aoyan's eyes lit up. Jiang Kuai smiled. It's all right. We're friends. You can enter the public house now. It's not an ordinary relationship. Hu Ziwen said. Wasn't it Chu Li who brought you in? That's true. Jiang Kuai said. That's right. Most people enter the public house when they're young. It's too difficult to get in halfway. Hu Ziwen said, seize the opportunity. There are many benefits to following Chu Li. Jiang Kuai smiled. I still want to try my luck. You want to do it yourself? Hu Ziwen shook his head and laughed. Xiao Jiang, you're too naive. There's nothing wrong with doing it yourself. Chu Aoyun said, I won't rely on anyone. I'll rely on my own abilities to make a living. It's not a problem to make a living. Hu Ziwen said, but don't you want everyone to respond to your call? What's the point of that? Chu Aoyan scoffed. Jiang Kuai smiled and nodded. Chapter 142. Jiang Kuai and Hu Ziwen were in a team. Both of them were in charge of one street. The east end of the street was a quiet residential area, while the west end was a bustling street. There was even a 2-story restaurant on the street, Immortal Offering Restaurant. The residential area was brightly lit with lanterns, but it was very quiet. There were more lanterns on the street, and people were coming and going. It was very lively. Jiang Kuai sighed with emotion. This was indeed Chongming Town. The liveliness at night was even more intense than during the day. However, it made sense when he thought about it. During the day, everyone was busy with their own things. At night, they would come out to join in the fun. The Immortal Offering Tower was 2 stories tall, its signboard fluttering in the night wind. In front of the Immortal Enshrinement Tower, lanterns hung all over the 1-story bridge, illuminating the restaurant like a celestial palace. The music coming from inside the tower was like the ethereal music of an immortal. The two of them strolled along the street, joining the endless stream of people. Hu Ziwen was relaxed and lazy. Patrolling the city is quite boring. We just walk around. At first, it's fun and lively, but after a dozen or so times, we get bored. It's quite lively. Jiang Kuai looked around. Hu Ziwen said, the people in the city know the rules. They won't mess around, so let's just walk around. We don't have to care about anything. The two of them happened to walk under the flower bridge of the Offering Immortal Loft. As soon as he finished speaking, a loud roar came from above. Jiang Kuai quickly said, there's a fight going on up there. Fighting was prohibited in Chongming Town. Those who were from the martial arts world would be stripped of their martial arts and thrown out of the town. Those who were not from the martial arts world would be punished with 20 strokes of the cane and a fine of 10 taels of silver. The rules were very strict, and they were enforced thoroughly. Hu Ziwen waved his hand. Don't worry. He brought Jiang Kuai up the fairy ablation tower and went straight to the second floor. There, he saw two people standing there. Their faces were almost touching each other as they scolded each other. The customers around them looked like they were watching a good show. Jiang Kuai glanced around. The number of people at the two adjacent tables was different. There were 4 people at one table, and the one standing and scolding was a burly man. The other table had 2 people, and the one standing and scolding was a skinny middle-aged man. The one with the surname Sun, you're just a grandson. You have no guts. You're not a man. Your mother knows best whether I have the guts or not. Go home and ask her. Sundishing, screw your ancestors. Do you have that ability? Sundishing, if you have the guts, come and hit me. Hitting you will dirty my hands. Bang. The sturdy man slammed his palm on the table, leaving a palm print. He roared, coward. The thin, middle-aged man sneered. If you're not a coward, then do it. Try touching one of my fingers. Bah! The burly man suddenly spat at the thin, middle-aged man's face. The skinny, middle-aged man was very clever. He dodged sideways and spat back. Pooey! Bah! The burly man was unconvinced and spat again. The thin, middle-aged man dodged it again and spat. Their spittle shot out like hidden weapons, causing the people behind them to suffer. They all dodged left and right, and it was extremely chaotic. Jiang Kuai could not help but want to laugh. He looked at Hu Ziwen. Brother Hu? Hu Ziwen shook his head. Just watch the show. Jiang Kuai said, does this count as a fight? No fighting, no weapons, it's not a fight, Hu Ziwen said. If there's a fight, it won't be too late for us to make a move. Jiang Kuai understood that although the 2 men were scolding each other fiercely, they did not dare to fight. A gentleman uses his mouth, not his fists. Spittle flying everywhere was just disgusting to look at. However, looking at the expressions of the customers around them, they did not find it disgusting. They only found it interesting. There was a limit to their spittle. The 2 men stopped after spitting a few mouthfuls at each other. They started scolding each other again, but as they got bored, they were persuaded by their own people to stop. They sat down to eat angrily. Jiang Kuai and Hu Ziwen left the fairy offering brothel. It seems that no one dares to offend the public house. Jiang Kuai sighed. The 2 walked towards the residential area and entered a quiet alley. Half of it is the public house's rules, and the other half is everyone's voluntary compliance, Hu Ziwen said with a smile. Even if you meet an irreconcilable enemy, you can't fight in the city. The city is the safest place. It's good for everyone. They can completely relax and rest. That's true. Jiang Kuai nodded and smiled. And there must be a lot of robbers in the city? If there are, the protectors will be rich. Hu Ziwen laughed. Didn't you go to the martial arts hall to look at the wanted list before you came? If you really meet them and catch them, the reward is very generous. I really didn't pay attention. Jiang Kuai smiled. It seemed that he had to slowly do the tasks and understand the rules. Hu Ziwen said, this is the favorite thing to do when patrolling the city. This year, I met a big robber and caught him. I got 10,000 taels of silver. I'll take a look when I get back, Jiang Kuai said. Hu Ziwen said, but don't expect too much. As long as they're not stupid, they will change their appearance. It's hard to recognize them. Jiang Kuai nodded. Just like him, when he went out, he would use the bone shrinking skill. Normally, he would restore his appearance. No one would know that he was the celestial monkey. If he did that, others might not be the same. In this world, no one was more stupid than anyone else. Suddenly, a soft scream was heard. Both of them were innate masters with sharp senses. They heard the sound and looked at each other. Hu Ziwen shouted, oh no! Jiang Kuai used his light body technique and rushed towards the source of the scream like a gust of wind. Hu Ziwen ran 2 steps and fell behind. He was shocked. He did not expect Jiang Kuai to have such an amazing light body technique. One really should not judge a book by its cover. When Hu Ziwen rushed into the house where the scream came from, the smell of blood hit his nose. In the open hall, a man and a woman were lying motionless in a pool of blood. Next to them was a baby. Hu Ziwen rushed into the hall and checked their breathing and pulse. Both of them still had heartbeats. There was a sword in their chests, and they were bleeding a lot. Hu Ziwen's expression was extremely ugly. He quickly pointed at the two of them to stop the bleeding. Then, his expression became twisted. He felt as if a knife was being twisted in his heart. He slowly took out a porcelain bottle and poured out 2 pills. He placed them in the mouths of the 2 people and then pressed his palms on their chests. He used his inner energy to activate the pills. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Hu Ziwen could not stop muttering. These were spirit blessing pills, and 2 of them. He had worked hard for 2 years to get them. After swallowing the spirit blessing pills, both of them were breathing normally. Their lives were saved. He went to check on the baby, who was sleeping soundly. Hu Ziwen glanced around, but did not see Jiang Kuai. He knew that Jiang Kuai must have seen the murderer and chased after him. However, he did not know if he could catch up to him. He could not go, lest the other party came back to kill him again. He felt that time pass like a year. After a while, Jiang Kuai floated over with a man in black in his hand. The man's acupuncture points were sealed, and he could not move at all. Hu Ziwen let out a long sigh of relief. Thank God, his spirit blessing pills were finally saved. Brother, Jiang Kuai threw the man in black to the ground and said helplessly, "One ran away. 2 fellows?" "Yes, 2. The other one's martial arts is more powerful." Hu Ziwen shook his head and sighed. Sigh. Young Jiang, you have it the wrong way. You have to save them first, then go after the murderer. Jiang Kuai was stunned. They can still be saved? Chapter 143. Is it really that magical? Jiang Kuai was shocked. Hu Ziwen said, as long as they're still breathing, the spirit blessing pill can save them. Fortunately, I have the spirit blessing pill with me, or else we'll be in big trouble. Jiang Kuai looked at the 2 people lying in the pool of blood. They're not dead. After taking the spirit blessing pill, it's hard to die even if you want to. Hu Ziwen laughed. Fortunately, you caught the murderer, or else my 2 spirit blessing pills would be gone. Can you still get them back now? If we can't catch the murderer, the public house will only return me 1 pill. If we catch the murderer, they'll return me 4 pills. Hu Ziwen laughed. The spirit blessing pill is issued once a year. You can't buy it. The public house issued it. Jiang Kuai was surprised. Such a life-saving pill was issued by the public house. It was indeed the public house. As long as we complete the task safely and without any mistakes, one will be issued at the end of the year. Can we buy it from others? No matter what, money is not as important as life. We protectors walk on the edge of a knife. Who can be sure that we won't run into danger? At this critical moment, life is at stake. Is money more important than life? That's true. Jiang Kuai nodded and looked at the man in black on the ground. Shall we interrogate him? No. Hu Ziwen waved his hand. Don't do anything. Leave him to the public house. What if we delay? Jiang Kuai frowned. Maybe if we interrogate him now and find him, we won't be able to find him. I'd rather not find him than do anything stupid. Hu Ziwen shook his head. We're not professionals. What if we kill him? Don't worry. Someone will be here soon. Just as he finished speaking, 2 figures floated in. Brother Hu, what's going on? The 2 men asked as soon as they entered. Jiang Kuai saw that both of them were young men in their 20s. His eyes lit up. They were also innate masters. It seemed that the number of innate masters in the public house was as many as dogs. If it was any other martial arts sect, having a few innate masters would already be the top strength. This guy is the murderer. The other one escaped. Bring him back to the public house. Hu Ziwen said seriously. The victim has been rescued. The public house will send someone over to treat him. We have nothing to do now. Congratulations, Brother Hu. The 2 young protectors smiled. No one died. Furthermore, if they caught a murderer, not only would they not be at fault, but they would also be rewarded handsomely, a reward that would make others envious. A single meritorious deed was equivalent to a year's worth of missions. This was something that others could not help but envy. Hu Ziwen grinned. Zhang Xian chuckled and clasped his fist. The 2 of them picked up the black-clothed man and floated away. As soon as they left, another old man floated in with a purple wooden box. Hu Ziwen quickly cupped his fists. Old Sheng. Old Sheng was dressed in a blue robe. He was tall and burly, like an iron tower. His hair was white, and his face was ruddy. He looked like an immortal. He waved at them and looked down at the people on the ground. Carry them to the table. Yes, Hu Ziwen replied respectfully. Together with Jiang Kuai, they gently lifted the two of them and slowly placed them on the table. Old Sheng opened the purple box he was carrying and took out the silver needles and a bottle of medicine. He first applied the ointment on their chests and inserted a few more needles. Old Sheng, are they all right? Asked Hu Ziwen. Thanks to your spirit blessing pill. Old Sheng stroked his white beard and nodded. Their lives are saved, but it will be difficult for them to recover. Their bodies will be weaker. They are lucky to be alive. Hu Ziwen let out a sigh of relief. You guys go ahead. Old Sheng waved his hand. Leave this to me. Yes. Hu Ziwen and Jiang Kuai left the house and continued to patrol the city. The alley was still quiet. The surrounding residents did not notice anything strange. They did not know that a massacre had happened beside them. Bathed in the soft light of the lantern, Jiang Kuai let out a long sigh. They are really lucky. He also secretly sighed at the power of the House of High Duke. How could the residents in the city not be loyal? They are really lucky. Hu Ziwen agreed. If we were one step later, they would have died. If that happened, we would be in trouble. We would be held responsible. Not only would we lose the spirit blessing pill, but we would also lose a lot of money. If we lose the spirit blessing pill, we would lose a lot of money too. Has this happened before? Of course. Hu Ziwen sighed, but some of them were unlucky. They lost the spirit blessing pill for the year, lost their reward, and were fined 10,000 taels. The punishment is so heavy. Jiang Kuai was surprised. 10,000 taels was not a small amount. The spirit blessing pill was priceless too. Hu Ziwen said, it's the same rule. The reward for the mission is high, and the punishment for not completing the mission is high. Do you think that if you can't complete the mission, you will not be punished? Jiang Kuai shook his head. He really did not know that the punishment was so heavy. But young Jiang, your light body technique is really good. Hu Ziwen praised. No wonder you could enter the public house halfway. You didn't just rely on your connections. Jiang Kuai smiled embarrassedly. This time, it's all thanks to your light body technique. Hu Ziwen patted Jiang Kuai's shoulder. If we didn't catch the murderer, our spirit blessing pill would be terrible. I was just lucky. Jiang Kuai smiled embarrassedly. You're too humble. Hu Ziwen smiled and shook his head. In the morning, after Chu Li had his breakfast, he strolled around and cultivated the sentient menace. Then, he entered the pagoda, as usual. He took out the tiger bones and sat in front of them to visualize the sun cultivating white tiger portrait. He realized that when he practiced the sun cultivating white tiger portrait, the closer he got to the tiger's bones, the stronger the effects would be. The strange energy in the air surged toward him like a tidal wave, engulfing him and squeezing him. It rushed into his body and washed over him, changing his blood, flesh, bones, and meridians. Xueling saw him cultivating the sun, cultivating white tiger portrait, and knew that she was a hindrance in the courtyard. She left the courtyard and went to the martial arts hall to read. She did not have a photographic memory. She could not remember a secret manual or notes that attracted her. She had to read it a few times. Chu Li had not been visualizing for long. When he opened his eyes, Xueling pushed the door open and entered. He looked at Xueling, who floated into the pagoda and exuded a delicate fragrance. What's the matter? Xueling quickly said, Master, Jiang Kuai accepted a patrolling mission last night. In the end, a massacre happened. Massacre? Fortunately, he and another protector ran over in time and scared the murderer away. They used the spirit blessing pill in time to save the two people. Jiang Kuai caught up and caught one of the murderers, but the other one ran away. Chu Li closed the box that contained the tiger bones and said casually, It's lucky that they didn't die. The public house will handle the matter of catching the murderer. It's not up to us to intervene. Xueling said, Jiang Kuai has made a great contribution this time. He has a firm foothold. Chu Li nodded. Xue smiled. Jiang Kuai was recommended by you, Master. His meritorious service is also your meritorious service. Chu Li nodded. Yes, but it's not a big deal. Go and do your work. Ling rolled her eyes at him and scoffed. There are still people who don't know what's good for them. They dare to kill people in the town. They are really bold. Chongming Town was the backyard of the public house. Killing people in Chongming Town was a provocation to the public house. The public house would not tolerate it and would investigate to the end. This was common sense. However, there were some people who wanted to get lucky and dared to test the law. This made her angry and confused. Did you find out who did it? Chuli asked. Ling said, it seems to be the Phoenix Tree faction. Chapter 144. Li raised his eyebrows. He had an impression of this Phoenix Tree faction. Back then, at the Leisure Cloud pub, a bunch of guys who provoked them had their legs broken by Zhaoing. It was said that they never went to the Leisure Cloud pub again. Perhaps they were too ashamed to go there. Zhao Ying's cultivation was not considered top-notch among the innate rankers, but her swordsmanship was superb. Ordinary innate rankers could not stop her. Ling said, Master also remembers this Phoenix Tree faction, right? Li grunted. Of course I remember. I reckon they'll have to settle the score with the Phoenix Tree faction this time. Shui wrinkled her nose and scoffed. They really don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. They should be taught a lesson. The Phoenix Tree faction had recently risen, and it seemed that quite a number of innate masters had appeared. They were insufferably arrogant. They did not even put the High Duke's public house in their eyes, and dared to provoke the High Duke's public house. Last time, it was at Leisure Cloud Pub. This time, he was killing people in the city. He was getting bolder and bolder. Li's fingers lightly tapped on the tiger bone casket. A strange sensation came from the pad of his finger, and his heart became calmer. His mind was filled with thoughts, and in an instant, a few thoughts appeared and disappeared. He vaguely felt that something was wrong. Everyone in the martial arts world knew about the strength of the High Duke's public house. The Phoenix Tree faction was not a fool. No matter how much they wanted to provoke them, they had to have a sense of propriety. If they wanted to make a name for themselves, they could not do it this way. Killing people in the city would be a disaster. The High Duke's public house would directly pay a visit to ask for the person. If the person was handed over, the Phoenix Tree faction would lose all its prestige. If the person was not handed over, the High Duke's public house would directly destroy the Phoenix Tree faction and would not be courteous at all. However, it was unlikely that he was framed. The third lady, Xiao Qi, was a perceptive person, so he could not hide anything from her. I will take a look. Li stood up and put away the tiger bone box. Shui's eyes lit up. Sure. The two of them arrived at the stargazing tower. Suru was coming downstairs, her apricot yellow gown fluttering in the wind. Li, what's the matter? She pointed at the armchair and gestured for him to sit down. The lady is resting. Li sat on the armchair while Shui stood behind him. Chief, was there a murder in the city last night? Yes, Lady Xiao has already dealt with it. Suru rubbed the space between her eyebrows. One of the killers has been caught. Where is he? Put him on the Thunder God Island. I want to see this person. Suru put down her hand. Frowning, she glared at him. What are you doing? Young Miss has already interrogated him. He's a disciple of Phoenix Tree sect. Doesn't she feel that something is wrong? Li shook his head. Does the Phoenix Tree faction's disciple really have such guts? When these guys are impulsive, what can't they do? I want to see why they would do such a thing. I can't help but feel restless. As long as they dare to kill people in the city, they deserve to be killed. Suru said disapprovingly. No matter what the reason is. Chief, accompany me to Thunder God Island. Li said. Suru sighed and looked at his calm expression. She said helplessly. Eldest Master has already sent out the protectors. Perhaps he has already caught the other murderer. What else is there to pursue? Li closed fist saluted and said nothing more. All right. Suru saw his persistence and sighed. You're a third rank now. I'll listen to you. Li laughed. In terms of rank, Suru was not as good as him. However, no one in the Fu dared to talk about rank in front of her. No matter how high her rank was, for the sake of third young miss, they could not order her around. Suru sighed. I'll inform Lady Xiao. Li nodded. She went upstairs and came down quickly. It was obvious that Xiao Qi did not want to see Li. The three of them stepped onto the small boat, and it shot out like an arrow. They traveled west on the lake for 15 minutes and arrived at a small green island. It was Thunder God Island. Thunder God Island was planted with pine trees, and it was green all year round. From afar, Chuli could feel the murderous aura. Although the security of Thunder God Island was not as good as Jade Guardian Island, it was still very tight. Ordinary masters could not break in. Suru picked up her waist tag and said, "Suru from Jade Guardian Island greets the owner of Thunder Island." A long laugh rang out, like a muffled clap of thunder rolling over. Chuli raised his eyebrow. What a profound cultivation level, a grandmaster. The small boat docked on the shore. A short and fat middle-aged man was already standing on the shore. His round face was red. His small eyes were bright. It was the owner of Thunder God Island, Lei Jun. "Miss Su, what brings you here?" Lei Jun laughed. His deep voice was like a subwoofer in the future, shaking people's blood. Suru closed fists saluted, "Thunder Island owner. I want to see the culprit that was brought here yesterday." "The kid from Phoenix Tree faction?" Lei Jun asked. "Yes," Suru said. Lei Jun said, "Follow me." He glanced at Chu Li and Shui Ling, but did not ask anything. Chu Li closed fists saluted and did not say anything. Chu Li used the omniscient mirror to look around. The island was full of flowers and green trees. The scenery was great. Lei Jun brought them down from an entrance. They came to a depth of 30 meters underground. There were many spacious stone rooms. Each room was about 100 square meters. Most of the stone walls were full of potholes. It was like a training room. Along the way, Chu Li saw people in 5 rooms. They were all young and strong. They were all cultivating and looked no different from ordinary people. They stopped in front of a stone room. Lei Jun took out a key and opened the iron lock. He pushed open the iron door and entered the stone room. A young man in black was lying on the stone bed. He was not moving. Lei Jun said, "This guy always wants to commit suicide. We can only seal his acupuncture points." Suru nodded and said to Chu Li, "It's this guy. Ask away." Chu Li looked at the young man in black and shook his head. "He's a death warrior. He's loyal." The young man in black was slender and handsome. His eyes stared at Suru with hatred. His resentment made people feel cold. Suru ignored his gaze and turned her head. "He's from Phoenix Tree faction?" Chu Li nodded slowly and waved his hand. Suru sighed, "All right. I'll a master Lei. Let's go out and wait." Lei Jun looked at Chu Li and looked at the young man in black. He smiled. "All right, let's go out." He was actually a little worried. He was worried that Chu Li would kill them. Then, his responsibility would be heavy. Luckily, Suru was there. When everyone left, only Chu Li was left. He casually glanced at the young man in black. "You entered Phoenix Tree faction when you were young. You have a grudge with the House of High Duke. Have you seen your faction leader? There are many masters in the faction, right? Why did you kill those two? Hey, that's interesting. What kind of masters are there in the faction?" The young man in black did not move. He glanced at him with contempt. As Chu Li asked questions, his face gradually became gloomy. He went straight out of the stone room. Suru and the other two were waiting outside. Chu Li closed fists saluted. "Thank you, Island Master Lei. Chief, let's go." "Let's go." Suru turned and walked out. She knew that Chu Li had the same ability as Lady Xiao. He could see through the details and see through people's hearts. Chu Li's footsteps were hurried. Suru saw that his expression was strange and hurriedly quickened her pace. She just stepped on the small boat, and Chu Li's figure flashed and disappeared. "Looks like it's really urgent." Suru shook her head. She and Shui Ling drove the small boat together. Under their joint efforts, the small boat was as fast as a gust of wind. It took a quarter of an hour to come and only 5 minutes to go back. Chu Li appeared on the 3rd floor of the stargazing tower. Xiao Qi was channeling on the couch and opened her eyes. Chu Li closed fists saluted and said, "Lady Xiao, Phoenix Tree faction is a trap." Xiao Qi looked at him calmly. Chu Li said, "The Rin Public House has grandmasters waiting in Phoenix Tree faction. How many did the public house send to Phoenix Tree faction?" 10 innate masters. Xiao Qi frowned. Shi Wu from the Rin Public House is in Phoenix Tree faction. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. Last night's case was also planned in advance. The couple were assassins. Chapter 145. Co. Chi's jade-like face darkened. She frowned and looked at him. It's all a trap? Chu Li nodded. One trap after another. The martial arts masters in the public house suffered a loss at the Phoenix Tree faction. You or Master Xiao Taiying will definitely go to the couple to ask what happened. They won't be on guard, so maybe you can really succeed. No one would be wary of two people who had just been mortally wounded, and they were the victims. Why can't I see that? Xiao Qi got up and opened the window. A gentle breeze blew in and lifted the white curtain in front of the window. She could also see through the other party's thoughts. When she interrogated the murderer, she didn't catch any of this, so she couldn't tell that it was a trap. Chu Li said, "The guy we caught is just a chess piece. He doesn't know about these things." You deduced all of this? Yes. Xiao Qi leaned against the window and pondered. How confident are you? Most likely. Chu Li said, if I were Lu Yurong, I would do the same. Her intelligence is not inferior to mine, but her methods might be even more insidious. Suru and Xue Ling rushed over. When they heard this, they quickly said, My lady, should we quickly inform Master Xiao? It's too late. Xiao Qi's jade-white face sank, and she sighed. They should have arrived at the Phoenix Tree faction by now. Then hurry up and send reinforcements. Suru said. Xiao Qi nodded gently. Chu Li, bring me there first. Tell Elder Zhao and the others to come later. Chu Li shook his head. I'll bring Elder Zhao there first. Co. Chi's eyes narrowed, and her gaze turned cold. Xiao Qi's temperament was cold, and she had an imposing aura. Her spiritual power was far superior to that of ordinary people. Coupled with her imposing manner, when she squinted her eyes, the air seemed to have solidified, and it was suffocating. Chu Li's expression did not change as he said, I reckon that they have more than one grandmaster. If the two of us go first, we won't be able to help. Instead, it'll be dangerous. That's right, that's right. Suru hurriedly nodded. Miss, let Elder Zhao go first. As the saying goes, the daughter of a wealthy family should not sit under the eaves. The young lady's precious body should not recklessly barge into the ambush of a grandmaster. It was too dangerous. Elder Zhao doesn't know the way, but you do? Xiao Qi scoffed. Chu Li sighed helplessly. My lady, the injury on your left arm hasn't healed yet, right? He really didn't want to say this. He knew her temperament. Adding fuel to the fire would make her even angrier. He's fully recovered, Xiao Qi said coldly. Suru gave Chu Li a look and hurriedly said, Chu Li also recognizes the Phoenix Tree faction, right? Miss, it's better to let Elder Zhao go. Xiao Qi glanced at Suru, and Suru shut her mouth in embarrassment. Chu Li said sternly, My lady, now is not the time to show off. Between you and Elder Zhao, who is stronger? Xiao Qi glared at him coldly. She had always been as calm as water and indifferent to everything. It was difficult to make her emotional, but she was angered by Chu Li's words. Chu Li stared back at her, without changing his expression. He was indeed worried. Shiwu was one of the top grandmasters. Although Xiao Qi was powerful, she was no match for Shiwu. He had his light body technique. If he could not win, he could escape, but Xiao Qi could not. If he was not careful and could not save her in time, her life would be in danger. Xiao Qi stared at Chu Li and said coldly, Suru, go and greet Elder Zhao and Elder Meng. Yes, my lady. Suru felt as if she had just been pardoned and quickly floated downstairs. Xue Ling also retreated quietly. She did not want to attract their attention. You're getting bolder, Xiao Qi scoffed. She pointed at the garden stool opposite. Chu Li sat on the garden stool. I'm afraid it's already over. That can't be helped, Xiao Qi said lightly. Martial arts practitioners are always on the brink of life and death. Bring more spirit blessing pills this time. Chu Li nodded slowly. Xiao Qi came to the purple cabinet and opened the cabinet door to take out 2 white jade bottles and handed them to Chu Li. Chu Li took them and kept them in his arms. He closed fists saluted. My lady, call Elder Song and the others over. It's impolite not to reciprocate. I'll send them over one by one. He disappeared in a flash and appeared on the shore of the Jade Guardian Island. Zhao Qingshan, Meng Wei, and Su Ru were hurriedly getting off the boat. Zhao Qingshan was the chief grandmaster in the public house. Meng Wei was thin and had a round face. He looked drunk and hazy. He was also one of the top grandmasters and usually did not like to talk. Chuli closed fist saluted, "Elder Zhao, Elder Meng, let's go." Zhao Qingshan nodded with a sullen face. "Let's go." Meng Wei asked now. Chuli nodded and put his hands on his and Meng Wei's shoulders. He suddenly disappeared on the spot. Su Ru saw the three of them disappear and let out a long sigh of relief. She looked worriedly at the stargazing tower. Chuli had really angered the lady this time. She did not know if he could save the lives of the 10 people in time. Chuli flashed a few times and appeared in front of the Phoenix Tree faction. The Phoenix Tree faction was located at the peak of a giant mountain covered in white snow. When Chuli heard Zhao Ying mention the Phoenix Tree faction, he thought about it and wanted to find a chance to teach them a lesson. Later, one thing followed another, and he did not have the time to take action. After that, he helped the girls build their foundation and taught them the sun-cultivating white tiger portrait. He changed his mind and wanted them to take revenge on their own. But he had already collected information about the Phoenix Tree faction and branded it in his mind. The Phoenix Tree faction was located at the peak of the Phoenix Tree Mountain, 5,000 meters above sea level. The mountain peak was covered in white snow and the air was thin. Those who were not martial arts masters could not stay here. For cultivators, such a position was beneficial for cultivation. Once Chuli appeared outside the main door, he immediately flashed and hid under a snow hill beside the main road. He whispered, "Elder Zhao, Elder Meng, wait for a while. I'll bring people over and we'll go in together." Zhao Qingshan frowned. "Can you make it in time?" "This moment is not a problem," Chuli said. Through the omniscient mirror, he saw the fierce battle inside. 5 of the 10 innate masters from the High Duke's public house had fallen. The remaining 5 were facing the siege of 10 people and were in imminent danger. There were still a few people standing at the side watching the show. Among the people watching the show, there were 4 grandmasters. Zhao Qingshan and Meng Wei could not help even if they went in. He flashed and disappeared on the spot. Zhao Qingshan looked at Meng Wei and spread his hands. He also felt that it was right to be cautious. It was not appropriate to rush and rashly. He did not want to lose himself in the process of saving people. Chuli desperately urged the imminent skyline and flashed nonstop. Luckily, the Phoenix Tree faction was only 100 miles away from Chongming Town. He flashed a few times and arrived. He flashed to the bottom of the stargazing tower. There were already 3 grandmasters waiting downstairs. Chuli did not say anything. He closed fists, saluted, and put his hands on each of their shoulders. He flashed and disappeared again, bringing another 2 people with him. He quickly appeared again. This time, Xiaoqi was also there, looking at him quietly. Chuli was helpless. He could only put his hands on her shoulders and disappeared again. After a while, he brought 6 people to the snow hill outside the Phoenix Tree faction. White snow, cold wind, these were insignificant to the grandmasters and innate masters. "Third lady, shall we rush in?" Zhao Qingshan closed fists, saluted, and asked. Xiaoqi frowned and looked at the towering buildings embedded in the peak of the mountain. The continuous palaces. Standing here, they could see the open palaces and tall buildings. 2 tall buildings and 3 palaces occupied the peak, looking down at them. If it was not for the snow hill blocking them, they could not escape the eyes of the people in the palaces. Chuli said, "My lady, we can just rush in directly. Let's go." Xiaoqi said slowly. 7 people rushed towards the open door, like 7 gusts of wind. Without waiting for the Phoenix Tree faction's garrison to react, they had already rushed into the open space in front of the basilica. 10 masters of the public house were lying on the ground. 10 disciples of the Phoenix Tree faction in dark blue clothes stood quietly at the side. They did not say a word, but their killing intent was dense. 7 or 8 middle-aged men were talking in front of them, commenting on the situation of them fighting just now. They pointed out what was right and wrong, which areas needed to be improved, and not to commit the same mistake again. Chapter 146. Chu Li and the other 6 rushed in like a gust of wind, immediately attracting their attention. Innate Masters, please step back. Grandmasters, please welcome them. A middle-aged man shouted. Chu Li did not care about anything else. He fed the 10 innate masters lying on the ground the spirit blessing pills one by one. Spiritual energy surged from all directions, splitting into 10 parts and entering their bodies. The benefits of his strong spirit and the power of the life and death scripture were displayed. 10 streams of spiritual qi surged into their bodies, stimulating and replenishing their vitality. Activating the medicinal power of the spirit blessing pill, their lives were saved in no time. Chu Li secretly felt lucky. Fortunately, an innate master's vitality was strong. Even if he was seriously injured or fatally wounded, he would not die immediately. Although he seemed to be dead, there was still a trace of life left in him. The spirit qi carried by the life and death scripture contained a vigorous vitality, directly replenishing him. Together with the spirit blessing pill, with the 2 stacked together, he could withstand any kind of injury. By the time he finished feeding them the spirit blessing pills, Shao Qi and the others were already engaged in a fierce battle. 5 grandmasters, one of which was almost a grandmaster, against 4 grandmasters, it directly formed an overwhelming advantage. Zhao Qingshan took on Shi Wu, and the remaining 3 grandmasters were also dealt with by the grandmasters from the House of High Dukes. Meng Wei and Shao Qi suddenly rushed towards the 10 Phoenix Tree faction disciples and the rest of the innate masters. Shao Qi's sword flashed like lightning, while Meng Wei's palms turned into a shadow, forming a one-sided massacre. In the blink of an eye, Shao Qi had stabbed 3 of them, and Meng Wei had also killed 3 of them. After Chu Li had finished feeding them the spirit blessing pill, half of the innate masters from the Phoenix Tree faction had fallen. Shao Qi hated their tricks. She was merciless, as she had almost killed 10 masters in the residence. Woo! In the main hall, the sound of a horn resounded throughout the entire Phoenix Tree sect. A group of people rushed out from the 2 towering buildings and 4 great halls like ants. They held blades and swords and surrounded everyone in the blink of an eye. They glared at them like tigers watching their prey, and their dense killing intent formed an intimidating force. Chu Li sat cross-legged and closed his eyes. 2 exquisite flying daggers had already slipped out of his sleeves. The omniscient mirror was activated to its maximum. He stared at the 8 grandmasters in battle, looking for a flaw that would allow him to kill them in one hit. There were more than 200 people around him, but Chu Li could not be bothered with them. There were 10 innate experts, and the rest were acquired experts, not worth mentioning. TSS. With a soft whistle, Chu Li swung his arm, and a cold light flew out. Be careful of Shao, Shi Wu shouted. A cold light suddenly appeared on the back of a grandmaster, as if it had pierced through the void. He was alarmed. However, he was too close and too fast, so he couldn't avoid it completely. His left shoulder was pierced by the cold light, and blood gushed out like a fountain. In the blink of an eye, his left arm was dyed red. Chu Li's martial arts had improved tremendously, and the power of his Eternity Blade was much stronger than before. In the past, even a grandmaster would be able to avoid it. Chu Li's other flying blade shot out at the same time. Another grandmaster was injured. Let's go, Shi Wu shouted angrily, turned around and left. The remaining 3 grandmasters forced their opponents from the public house away and followed closely behind. In a flash, Chu Li disappeared from where he stood and suddenly appeared 100 feet away. 2 beams of cold light shot towards an injured grandmaster at the same time. He wanted to kill a grandmaster, so he could not make a wasted trip. The one with the surname Chu. Shi Wu turned around and threw a punch. A golden light flashed across Chu Li's face. He took the punch head-on, and the flying blade hit the grandmaster's shoulder. It was extremely difficult to hit a grandmaster's vital point. A grandmaster's explosive power was extremely strong. With warning signs, he could dodge in advance, and with the protection of vital energy, it was enough to avoid the vital point. Bang! Chu Li felt as if he was hit by a giant wood. He flew straight out and crashed into the crowd. They held swords in their hands and unceremoniously slashed down. Several swords stabbed at him, and he was suddenly in danger. Chu disappeared from where he stood, and the swords only hit his shadow. He once again appeared 100 feet away. Another 2 flying daggers shot out like 2 flashes of lightning, injuring another Grandmaster. But they were extremely fast. They did not fight with Chu Li and only dodged. Their speed did not decrease, and they disappeared in front of everyone in the blink of an eye. Chu Li shook his head helplessly and gave up the chase. It was difficult to kill a Grandmaster. In the face of the acquired masters, Chu Li's face became gloomy. He glanced at Xiao Qi and the others who were being surrounded and blocked by 10 innate masters on the ground. They were wantonly killing without mercy. Acquired masters were no different from toddlers in front of grandmasters. They could not withstand a single blow. The upper echelons of the Phoenix Tree faction were already killed. No one stopped them from going forward to die. The disciples of the Phoenix Tree faction were full of blood, and they rushed forward without fear of death. Even if they were no match, they were not timid and rushed forward without a care for their own safety. Chu Li glanced at the masters of the High Duke's public house on the ground. He had no pity. Once the war started, it would be life and death. It had nothing to do with justice, only life and death. If he did not kill them, they would kill him. Chu Li sighed and flashed into the crowd. His palms gently patted their backs, and they died instantly without any pain. He killed 10 people, and there were no more disciples of the Phoenix Tree faction standing. More than 200 people were lying on the ground, densely overlapping each other. It was a ghastly sight. Chu Li's omniscient mirror scanned the surroundings. There were some old and weak women and children in the hall. They were hiding in the shadows in the corner and did not dare to move. They were afraid that their movements would attract killing intent. Chu Li looked at Xiao Qi and then looked at the tall building and the palace. Xiao Qi shook her head. "You go find a carriage. Let's go back." "Yes," Chu Li responded and went to find horses and carriages. There were only 10 horses in the huge Phoenix Tree faction, but they were all unusually spirited. Ordinary horses could not survive here. The 10 horses were matched with 5 carriages. When he got out of the carriages, everyone moved out 15 big boxes. Chu Li glanced at it and knew that it was a windfall that was plundered from the Phoenix Tree faction. To be able to find these in such a short period of time, the Phoenix Tree faction was certainly rich, but they were also experienced. 2 carriages carried the wounded, and the other 3 carried the boxes. A group of people slowly drove out of the Phoenix Tree faction. Chu Li sat on the carriage as the coachman. Before going down the mountain, he turned his head and glanced at the majestic towering building. He shook his head and sighed. Xiao Qi was merciful and did not kill them all. She spared the people hiding in the hall, but the Phoenix Tree faction was destined to decline, and it would be difficult for them to make a comeback. It was no wonder that the Phoenix Tree faction was ambitious. To be able to cultivate more than 10 innate masters in a short period of time was a sign of their rise. Unfortunately, they overestimated themselves and cooperated with the Ren public house to plot against the High Duke's public house. They were destined to end like this. Their success was sudden and their demise was quick. This was the fate of the martial arts faction. Just like the 4 major sects that maintained their prosperity for hundreds of years, only the 4 major sections. It was rare for the other factions to be able to prosper for 100 years. They were not arrogant when they were flourishing and were patient when they were declining. This was the way of survival for the faction. Phoenix Tree faction was like this. It would be difficult for them to last long. Chu Li guessed that they must have obtained some secret manuals and had a fortuitous encounter. That was why they were flourishing like a nouveau riche and did not know how to clean up. Thinking of this, he glanced at those big boxes. There were a few secret manuals, but martial arts secret manuals were really not precious to the High Duke's public house. His martial arts was already exquisite enough. If he wanted to step in the Grandmaster's boundary, what he lacked was not martial arts secret manuals. By the time they returned to Chongming Town, it was already past noon. They had missed lunchtime. After Xiao Qi entered the town, she gently pulled Chu Li and whispered to him to greet Jiang Kuai. She wanted to visit the 2 victims to verify whether they were assassins or not. Chapter 147. The sun was bright and warm. Jiang Kuai wore a moon-white undergarment and sat lazily on a wooden armchair. The armchair was placed at the foot of the steps of the gazebo, reflecting the sun. In the gazebo, he could admire the rustling green bamboos and the blossoming flowers. He preferred to bask in the sun. When the sun shone on his body, he felt an indescribable warmth and comfort. His whole body seemed to melt and relax. He squinted his eyes and occasionally opened them to glance at his wife, who was busy in the flower bed. Su Yuting rolled up her sleeves, revealing her white lotus-like arms. She was using a long pair of scissors to trim the flowers. Although the flower beds had always been taken care of, they were not meticulous enough. They only removed the weeds and did not trim the flowers. Jiang Kuai's heart was overflowing with happiness and warmth as he looked at her serious and focused face under the sunlight. Her face looked even more beautiful and pure. This small courtyard was a world of its own, and no one disturbed it. He used to find a place to relax in the depths of the mountains, but there was always a trace of nervousness in the depths of his heart. He was afraid that enemies would come looking for him, so he didn't dare to let down his guard and completely relax. Now that he had arrived at the public house and lived here, he finally experienced the feeling of being completely relaxed. He was carefree. Looking at Su Yuting immersed in the flowers, he felt even more happy and warm. Just as he was thinking about this, the sound of footsteps came from outside, followed by a knock on the door. "Who?" Jiang Kuai asked in a low voice. Chu Li's voice rang out. "Brother Jiang, it's me, Chu Li. Brother Chu." Jiang Kuai got up and floated to the front door. He opened the courtyard door and chuckled. "Rare guest, please come in. Yuting, Brother Chu is here." Su Yuting straightened her back, combed her messy hair, and smiled sweetly. "Young Master Chu, please come in." Chu Li closed fists, saluted, and smiled. "You're welcome, sister-in-law. I'm looking for Brother Jiang for a drink. We haven't had a good chat since we entered the public house." "Then let's do it here." Su Yuting smiled and said, "I'll cook 2 dishes for you." Chu Li shook his head. "There's no need for that. It's better to go outside." He signaled Jiang Kuai with his eyes. Jiang Kuai understood tacitly and knew that something was up. He waved his hand and said, "You go ahead with your work. Let's go out for a drink." "All right then. Don't drink too much wine." Su Yuting warned, "Don't mess things up." This was his first time here. If he were to make a mistake because of drinking, it would be disadvantageous for him in the future. "I know." Jiang Kuai smiled and waved his hand. He went into the house to change his clothes. The two of them left the courtyard and came to a pine tree. Jiang Kuai asked, "Brother Chu, what is it?" Chu Li said, "Go and take a look at the 2 injured people." "No problem." Jiang Kuai let out a sigh of relief. He thought it was something big that made Chu Li visit them personally. Chu Li put a hand on his shoulder. "Then let's go." Jiang Kuai's vision was blurred. He could not see anything clearly, only the distorted light and shadow. A strong urge to vomit rose in his heart. He struggled for a while, but his body was stiff and he could not move. His eyes lit up and the urge to vomit intensified. He took a deep breath to suppress the churning in his chest. He quickly turned his head and looked around. He had actually arrived at the south gate of the public house. The 2 ferocious stone lions had left a deep impression on him. He widened his eyes and looked at Chu Li, then at the woman in white who was standing quietly at the side. Although her face was covered by a white veil and her face could not be seen clearly, her figure was graceful, and her temperament was like that of a fairy. He could not turn his eyes away. Chu Li coughed softly. "Brother Jiang." "Brother Jiang Kuai, this is the 3rd lady." As soon as Jiang Kuai met Xiao Qi's cold gaze, it was like a basin of cold water was poured on his head. Her white dress, graceful figure, and temperament caused the feeling to dissipate. He quickly closed fists, saluted. "Greetings, 3rd lady." Xiao Qi nodded slightly. "You're welcome. Protector Jiang, let's go." Jiang Kuai closed fists, saluted. He tactfully led the way in front, and Chu Li accompanied Xiao Qi at the back. Jiang Kuai used his light body technique. His feet were floating, and he was extremely fast. He remembered the situation just now. After a few breaths, from his small courtyard to the south gate of the public house, the speed was shocking. He really could not imagine what kind of light body technique it was. Sure enough, there was always someone better than him. He always thought that his light body technique was peerless and the best in the world, but now he knew that he was ignorant. His body technique was extremely fast, and soon he arrived at the small courtyard where the incident happened last night. Jiang Kuai came to the courtyard door and explained, "They are a couple. They just had a child, and the child has been sent to the public house to be taken care of." Xiaoqi nodded slightly. Jiang Kuai opened the courtyard door and entered. There was a faint smell of blood. Jiang Kuai brought the two to the bedroom in the main hall. The husband and wife were sitting on the couch, cultivating. "Xiao Deng, Madame Deng, the third lady is here to visit you," Jiang Kuai said. The two opened their eyes and looked at Xiaoqi. Xiaoqi said lightly, "Where are you from?" The two were stunned. They looked at each other and remained silent. Xiaoqi took a deep look at the young man, and her tone became calmer. "Phoenix Tree faction?" The two's expression changed slightly. Jiang Kuai was surprised. It can't be. Could it be that they rebelled against the Phoenix Tree faction? The ones who assassinated the two were disciples of the Phoenix Tree faction, and they were also from the Phoenix Tree faction. Chuli suddenly put his hands on Xiaoqi and Jiang Kuai's shoulders. In a flash, the three suddenly disappeared from the bedroom and appeared in the living room. Bang! A muffled sound came from the bedroom. Jiang Kuai hurriedly channeled to stop his body from shaking. He widened his eyes and looked at the bedroom. Chuli sighed. "It's really powerful," Xiaoqi said lightly. "It's impossible to guard against. Let's go." "Third lady?" Jiang Kuai did not know what happened. Xiaoqi said, "Report to the government office." Chuli shook his head and sighed. "They're the assassins who tried to kill Third Lady. It's a trick of self-injury. I'll have to trouble Brother Jiang Kuai to deal with the rest." A trick of self-injury? Jiang Kuai was dubious. Chuli smiled, closed fists saluted, and left. Jiang Kuai stepped into the messy bedroom dubiously. The wall was full of holes, as if it was caused by countless arrows. The bed was scattered in a pile. Other than that, there were only some broken pieces of cloth. Jiang Kuai frowned. These pieces of cloth belonged to the couple just now. Their clothes were torn to this extent. What about them? He looked carefully. There were a few pieces of debris left in the corner, like the debris of porcelain pieces. It was warm to the touch. His expression suddenly changed. He spat out a mouthful of air and fled the bedroom in a hurry. He rushed to the courtyard and greedily breathed in the fresh air. He finally guessed that the couple performed a secret skill similar to the Sky Demon disintegration. They turned themselves into the most tyrannical force and exploded. Not even their bones were left. He could not help but be afraid. No matter how powerful his light body technique was, he could not escape this kind of disintegration secret skill. Especially in the narrow bedroom, just now, there was nowhere to escape. Chu Li and Xiaoqi floated away. Second lady took the longevity grass. "How is her condition?" "There are no changes," Xiaoqi said. "Maybe the medicine needs some time to take effect." "I want to meet second lady," Chu Li said. Xiaoqi glanced at him. "You care about second sister. The longevity grass is useless against the vitality sealing finger." Chu Li shook his head. "It can't delay her decline. Second sister doesn't see outsiders." "Can't I see her too?" "You don't think you're an outsider?" Xiaoqi looked at him lightly. Chu Li said helplessly, "Is there really no way?" Xiaoqi said, "Let me ask. She's not in a good mood now. She may not see you." "Thank you, lady." Chu Li closed fist saluted. Chapter 148. When Chu Li returned to the Gloriesville courtyard, he lay on the bed and closed his eyes. He relaxed his mind and did not think about anything. He used the Zen meditation technique to be free of worries, without any form or self. He only opened his eyes when Xue called him over for dinner. The bedroom was already dark, and the windows were dyed red by the sunset glow. He left the bedroom and went to the main hall. Xueling had already laid out the dishes. Chu Li glanced at the square table. There were 8 dishes and 2 soups. It was a lot richer than usual. What's the occasion today? Chu Li sat down. Xue sat opposite him. She first held the pot with both hands and filled the white jade cup. While she was filling it up, she asked, Master, I heard that you guys destroyed the Phoenix Tree faction today. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and looked at her. Her eyes were bright and sparkling. It's true, right? You're quite well informed, Chu Li said. Xueling smiled and said, It's spread all over the martial arts hall. Chu Li nodded. Yes, I destroyed the Phoenix Tree faction. It's just a small faction, it's no big deal. Phoenix Tree sect, Xueling exclaimed. I heard that this faction had just risen and was quite powerful. How could it be destroyed so quickly? Could it be that young master still holds a grudge against them for causing trouble in Leisure Cloud Pub? You don't know the reason? Chu Li asked. Xueling said, They said that the Phoenix Tree faction broke the rules in the city and killed someone. Chu Li picked up the white jade cup and took a sip. How dare he kill someone in the city? Xue scoffed. He must be crazy. It's not surprising that he's so arrogant after achieving his goals. But who doesn't know that if anyone dares to kill someone in the city, the High Duke's public house will definitely hunt them down and never let them go? Xueling said, Aren't they afraid? Since he dares to kill people in the city, he naturally isn't afraid. They must be hoping that they won't be able to find anything. Chu Li casually picked up a piece of pork rib and chewed it slowly. Xueling stared at him with her bright eyes. Master, you've destroyed an entire sect. Don't you feel anything? How do you feel? Chu Li took a sip of wine. Don't you think you're amazing? Aren't you excited at all? Xue looked at him helplessly. Master, you're such a killjoy. Chu Li glared at her. What's so exciting about killing people? You're also an innate expert now. You could be a bodyguard. I think it's better for me to be a scribe, Xueling scoffed. Once she became a guard, she needed to take on missions. She couldn't always stay by his side to serve him. He had a lot of problems and was hard to please. However, without his help, he would not be able to become an innate master. Once he became an innate master, he would run off to become a guard and not serve him. It was not right. Just do it if you want to. There's no need to accommodate me. I'm not accommodating you. Xueling shook her head. Master, I heard that we injured 10 innate masters. Is the Phoenix Tree faction really that powerful? They have quite a number of masters, Chu Li said. Well, they were still destroyed by you guys, Xueling said proudly. Chu Li looked at her and sighed. All right, I'll make things clear to you. Although Xueling looked cold and indifferent, she was not naive at all. After all, she had been living on the Jade Guardian Island for a long time. She did not have much experience in scheming. She knew that people were vicious, but she did not have a deep understanding of them. Once they went out, they would definitely be at a disadvantage. Chu Li reminded, Don't tell anyone about this. I know. I won't tell anyone. Xue quickly nodded. Tell me. Chu Li said, This is a trap set up by the Ren public house. We have to start from when Jiang Kuai was patrolling the town. He finished the whole story in one breath. Xueling's eyes widened and looked at him in shock. It's a trap? Chu Li nodded and drank the jade cup in one gulp. Xueling refilled his cup subconsciously and said in surprise, What kind of brain does Lu Yurong have? How could she come up with such an idea? So don't think that you're smart. Chu Li sighed. There are many smart people. Xueling sighed. Our public house is really unlucky to have become enemies with Lu Yurong. We'll just deal with it when it comes. We can't just lower our heads and beg for mercy. Chu Li took a sip of wine. This woman is really ruthless. It's impossible to guard against her. We don't know how many times we've been taken advantage of by her. Xueling scoffed and then pursed her lips into a smile. But Master, you're amazing. You've broken through a few plots and caused her to suffer heavy casualties. She must hate you to death. Chu Li smiled. The Ren public house could not wait to kill him. However, he had cultivated the imminent skyline and could threaten a grandmaster. Lu Yurong had to be cautious. Unfortunately, he had never met Lu Yurong. He had to familiarize himself with Lu Yurong's thoughts so that he would not fall into her trap. Chu Li knew, in terms of intelligence and cunning, He was not as good as Lu Yurong. Without the omniscient mirror, he would have been tricked long ago. He had an unfair advantage, but it was still a victory. It was better than losing. If he had to abandon the omniscient mirror to fight with Lu Yurong, he would have lost his life. If you're a protector, it's inevitable that you'll meet such a person. Chu Li shook his head. With your martial arts, I'm afraid you won't be able to escape. Shuai Ling frowned. It's rare to see such a difficult person, right? Chu Li scoffed. If Lu Yurong wants to deal with the protectors of our public house, it won't be your turn, right? Shuai Ling's frown deepened. Master, don't scare me. Chu Li glanced at her. You think I'm scaring you? Shuai Ling scoffed. I'm not going to be a protector. Don't worry. Chu Li laughed. It's still safer to stay in the public house. Shuai Ling rolled her eyes at him and scoffed. I understand now. You just want me to serve you. As the two of them bickered, there was a knock on the door. Shuai Ling glided to the entrance of the courtyard. She opened the door and curtsied. My lady. Xiao Qi wore a white gown and slowly walked in. She glanced at Chu Li in the hall. Chu Li stood up and closed fist saluted. Let's go and see second eldest sister. Xiao Qi said. Chu Li quickly said, I'm coming. Shuai Ling quickly took out a silk handkerchief from her sleeve and handed it to Chu Li. Chu Li carelessly wiped his hands and returned it to her. He then followed Xiao Qi out of the courtyard. The two of them strolled in the lush forest. The night was like water. The moonlight shone everywhere. The low chirping of insects was endless. Second eldest sister doesn't look too good, Xiao Qi said. Chu Li sighed. Second lady doesn't have much time left. The longevity grass is blocked by the vitality sealing finger. The only way is to remove the vitality sealing finger. We can't conclude that it's the vitality sealing finger yet. The longevity grass doesn't work. It's enough to show that it's the vitality sealing finger. Chu Li frowned. Second lady doesn't have much time left. We can't delay any longer. Xiao Qi was silent for a moment. She lightly said, Let's see second eldest sister first. The bright moon on the lake swayed gently. The small boat broke the tranquility of the lake. When the two of them stepped on the island of Symphony, the surrounding protectors did not move. The island was brightly lit. The sound of the guzheng drifted leisurely. It traveled far in the night sky along the surface of the lake. Chu Li felt the calmness and detachment in the sound of the guzheng. It's the sound of second eldest sister, Xiao Qi said. Chu Li nodded. From the sound of the guzheng, he knew that Xiao Shi had seen through life and death. She accepted reality and did not care about death. If she cultivated Buddhism with this state of mind, she would definitely advance 1,000 miles in a day. Unfortunately, with this state of mind, she would not cultivate Buddhism. The two of them passed through the brightly lit sea of flowers. They arrived at the pagoda in the middle of the sea of flowers. Chapter 149. The spacious garden was deserted. Only Xiao Shi was sitting alone in the pagoda, playing the guzheng. Under the bright light, her loose white robe could not hide her graceful silhouette, cold and lonely. Chu Li could not help but feel pity for her. The faint sound of the guzheng lingered in the air as Chu Li and Xiao Qi slowly stepped into the gazebo and stood behind her. Second eldest sister, Xiao Qi called out. Xiao Shi turned her head, and the music stopped abruptly. Greetings, second lady. Chu Li did a fist salute. Xiao Shi pushed the zither away and stood up with the help of the stool. Her movements were gentle and graceful. Chu Li glanced around. The gazebo was quiet and cold. There were only 2 palace lanterns lit up. Compared to the brightly lit surroundings, it was like a completely different world. Chu Li, why did you want to see me? Xiao Shi pointed at him. Chu Li sat opposite her. I want to treat Lady Xiao's illness again. Xiao Qi took the guzheng away and sat beside her. My illness. Xiao Shi smiled. What's there to see? It doesn't matter if I see it or not. Chu Li asked, where's Elder Gua? Elder would deduce that it's the vitality sealing finger. Xiao Shi smiled. So what if it's the vitality sealing finger? It can't be undone. Chu Li remained silent. The vitality sealing finger was the world's most insidious sneak attack, and it was the hardest to detect. The most insidious thing about it was that it could not be used against adults and was only effective against infants. Infants who were hit by the vitality sealing finger would not be able to detect it and would not have any abnormalities. Only when they slowly grew up would they be able to detect the abnormalities. Unsealing the vitality sealing finger required a strong inner force to enter from the Baihui channel and exit from the gushing spring channel. It instantly combed through the body, like a flood rushing into the riverbed, sweeping away all the obstructions. This tyrannical inner force required one to circulate through all the meridians and acupoints in one's body in one go. However, it also required one to have a precise grasp of the inner force. If one was not careful, they would lose their life. Undoing the vitality sealing finger could be said to be a narrow escape from death. Chuli reckoned that with the High Duke's public house's rich collection of books, they must have found the vitality sealing finger. They also knew the risks of unsealing the vitality sealing finger. For thousands of years, the number of people who managed to unseal the vitality sealing finger could be counted with one hand, and all of them were extremely tough people. It was precisely because he knew about the origin sealing finger that he didn't dare to undo it. Even though she was weak right now, she was still alive. Once the vitality sealing finger was released, her life would immediately be in danger. Xiaoqi said, "Chuli, do you have a way to undo it?" Chuli nodded slowly. "Are you really confident?" Xiaoqi asked. Chuli answered, 60%. Xiaoqi frowned as her eyes flickered. Xiao sure smiled. "It's useless. Big brother won't agree to you helping me." "Master Xiao." Chuli shook his head helplessly. Eldest young master was conservative in nature, and he valued his younger sister too much, so he was too worried about personal gains and losses. If it was any other matter, he would be wise and capable of making quick decisions. However, when it came to his own family, it was as if he had changed into a different person, indecisive and indecisive. At the end of the day, it was because he valued relationships too much and was too concerned about everything. Xiaoqi said, "I'll convince Big Brother." "Little sister, do you think you can convince Big Brother?" Xiaoshi chuckled and shook her head. "Even if Father comes out of isolation, he won't be able to convince Big Brother. Let's give it a try," Xiaoqi said. Xiaoshi turned to look at Chuli. "Chuli, you're really bold. If anything happens to me, Big Brother will make sure that you pay with your life." Chuli said, "It's just death," as expected of someone with a profound dermic base. Xiaoshi chuckled. "You've seen through life and death." Chuli smiled. "I'm actually afraid of death, too." He had experienced reincarnation, so he was not that afraid of death. Death might be the next part of his journey, and he might be reincarnated into another world. Death might not necessarily be a relief. Xiao sure sighed faintly. "Second sister, rest well. The night wind is cold. Be careful." Xiaoqi interrupted her thoughts. "I'll look for Big Brother tomorrow." Xiaoshi smiled. "It all depends on your ability." She was indifferent to life and death. It did not matter to her who undid the vitality sealing finger. "Elder Zhao, give it a try." Xiao Tang sat in the armchair and looked at Zhao Qingshan, who was opposite him. "You're the one with the most profound cultivation level in our public house. Second sister can only rely on you." The morning sun shone in. The hall was bright and clean. There were only 3 people in the hall: Xiao, Taiying, Zhao Qingshan, and Lingquan, who was standing at the side. Lingquan had white hair and a ruddy complexion. He stood behind Xiao Taiying with his eyes slightly closed. It was as if he had fallen asleep. Only Xiao Taiying and Zhao Qingshan were talking. "Master Xiao." Zhao Qingshan closed fist saluted. He sighed helplessly. "I'm really not confident." If we're talking about confidence, Elder Zhao is the most confident in the public house. The others are even less confident. Xiao Taiying stood up. He picked up the teapot and personally filled it with water. Zhao Qingshan quickly stood up. He held the teacup with both hands. He smiled bitterly. "Master Xiao, I really can't do it. Let's look for someone else. Elder Gua is much stronger than me. At least he's a physician. He knows more about the vitality sealing finger." Co Tying sat back in the armchair. He shook his head and sighed. Elder Gua's medical skills are great, but the key to unsealing the vitality sealing finger is not medical skills. It's inner energy. You need a deep and precise inner energy. Zhao Qingshan sighed. But I'm really not confident. It's okay. Co Tying smiled. Even if there's an accident, I won't take it out on Elder Zhao. After all, you're the strongest in the public house. This is second sister's fate. It's her fate. I'm not afraid of taking it out on you. Zhao Qingshan shook his head. I really don't dare to harm Second Lady. He secretly pouted. It would be weird if he didn't take it out on her. Second Lady was Master Co's sweetheart. Although they were siblings, they were no different from father and daughter. The High Duke had isolated himself to practice martial arts since they were young. He had not shown his face for more than 10 years. No one knew if he was dead or alive. Their mother died during childbirth. Master Co had been taking care of his 2 younger sisters and 1 younger brother. He was the elder brother. He was more like a father. Elder Zhao, do you want me to kneel down and beg you? Co Tying sighed. Zhao Qingshan smiled bitterly. Master Co, I'll kneel down and beg you. I'm really not confident. Why don't you beg the Emperor? He's powerful. It shouldn't be difficult for him to save Second Lady. The Emperor? Co Tying smiled bitterly. The decline of the public house had something to do with the Emperor. His father and the Emperor seemed to have fallen out because of a woman. That was why the public house was not favored by the Emperor. That was why the Ren public house dared to be so unscrupulous. If the public house was valued by the Emperor, the Ren public house would not dare to go too far. Zhao Qingshan said, based on Master Co's reputation, the Emperor should be able to agree. The chances are slim. Co Tying sighed. The Emperor has to deal with a myriad of issues every day. He doesn't have the time to deal with these trivial matters. What about the High Duke? Zhao Qingshan quickly said. Ask the High Duke to come out of isolation. He will definitely be able to do it. Co Tying sneered. Zhao Qingshan quickly shut his mouth. He wanted to slap himself. He should not have mentioned the High Duke. Master Co was very dissatisfied with the High Duke. He got angry whenever the High Duke was mentioned. If it were him, he would also be angry. Because his wife had a difficult birth, he immediately went into isolation and left the public house to a 15-year-old child. He did not care about the life and death of the remaining child. The High Duke was indeed an irresponsible father. Suddenly, a report came from outside. Master, the third lady is here. Xiao Qi was dressed in white. She fluttered in, bringing with her a refreshing fragrance. Elder Zhao, big brother, what are you talking about? Xiao Qi sat beside Co Tying. Co Tying sighed. I'm begging Elder Zhao to help second younger sister remove the vitality sealing finger. Xiao Qi's clear eyes looked at Zhao Qingshan. Zhao Qingshan quickly waved his hand. I dare not agree. Xiao Qi looked at Co Tying. Co Tying sighed. Other than Elder Zhao, who else can we rely on? Zhao Qingshan quickly stood up and closed fist saluted. Master, third lady, I shall not disturb you anymore. Goodbye, goodbye. He took 2 to 3 steps out of the hall and left in a hurry. He did not give Co Tying a chance to ask him to stay. Chapter 150. Co Tying had already stood up. He looked at the entrance of the main hall and shook his head helplessly. This Elder Zhao. He secretly cursed Zhao Qingshan for being cunning and unwilling to take risks. Unsealing the vitality sealing finger was risky, but Zhao Qingshan was the chief high official of the public house. If he was not allowed to do it, who else could? He was not confident, and the others were even less so. He was the one with the lowest risk. Big brother, let Chuli do it, Xiao Qi said. Chuli? Co Tying was stunned. He sneered him. He can undo the vitality sealing finger, Xiao Qi said seriously. If it wasn't for him, who would know that second eldest sister was hit by the vitality sealing finger? He can see it, but he might not be able to solve it. Co Tying said snappily. If he wants to solve it, he'll have to become a grandmaster first. Although Chu Li is an innate master, he can kill a grandmaster, Xiao Qi said coldly. Moreover, in terms of inner energy, he's better than a grandmaster. Co Tying could not help but laugh. Little sister, what kind of magic potion did Chuli feed you? The difference between a grandmaster and innate is like heaven and earth. Inner energy surpasses a grandmaster. How dare you say that? Big brother, do you think I'm spouting nonsense? Xiao Qi scoffed. Co Tying looked at her cold gaze. He opened his mouth and swallowed his words. He lightly coughed and sternly said, "All right, even if what you said is true, and he really has such a deep level of inner strength, the key to unsealing the vitality sealing finger is the precise control of inner strength. If there is even the slightest mistake, second sister will lose her life." Xiao Qi asked, "Does Big Brother think that he was lucky to be able to cultivate the sun cultivating white tiger portrait?" Co Tying muttered to himself. He had also practiced the sun cultivating white tiger portrait before, but he had not been able to master it. Although the sun cultivating white tiger portrait was powerful, it was like a pearl at the peak of a towering mountain. Not everyone could pluck it. For Chu Li to be able to master it, he must have something stronger than him. Xiao Qi scoffed. The key to mastering the art of white tiger is the power of one's primordial spirit. Why is Chu Li able to read people's minds? Why can I read people's minds? It's because his primordial spirit is far superior to ordinary people. Are you saying that his control over inner energy is more precise? Co Tying frowned and asked. Xiao Qi said slowly, "Do you think I'll treat second eldest sister's life as a game? You're not using Elder Zhao, but Chu Li? Just because Chu Li is my man?" "That's true," Co Tying said thoughtfully. He believed in third younger sister's feelings for second younger sister. And he also believed that third younger sister had always been fair and would not be biased. Although he thought too highly of Chu Li was indeed not an ordinary talent. He was worthy of his attention. However, he was conservative in nature, so he could not ignore Chu Li's age. The accumulation of time was too important. There was a world of difference between a 10-year-old spirit herb and a 100-year-old spirit herb. There was no shortcut. It was the same for humans. Experience and wisdom needed to be accumulated over time. But Co Tying sighed. It was rational. Since third younger sister strongly recommended Chu Li, there must be something good about him. Emotionally, Zhao Qingshan felt that Chu Li was too impulsive and unreliable. Zhao Qingshan tried every possible way to reject Chu Li, but Chu Li insisted on saving third younger sister's life at all costs. Chu Li had a good heart. However, emotional impulses could easily ruin things. Once something unexpected happened, it would be very difficult to think calmly and find a way to salvage the situation. Co Qi said, "Big brother, do we have a better choice now?" Elder Zhao will not agree anyway. Co Tying remained silent. Co Qi did not rush him. She just watched quietly. The morning sun shone on the hall, making it bright and gentle. The birds outside were chirping incessantly, making Co Tying a little annoyed. Time passed unknowingly. Co Qi sipped her tea, looking relaxed. After a while, Co Tying raised his head and sighed. "Third younger sister, I've decided to go to Fairy's capital." "Fairy's capital?" Co Qi frowned. "Big brother, are you going to beg the emperor?" "Yes, the safest way is to beg the emperor." Co Tying nodded slowly. "For second younger sister, this is the only way." "The emperor will not agree." Co Qi shook her head. "If he really agrees, he will die of exhaustion." "Won't he die of exhaustion?" A heavenly god realm expert could do many things that were impossible for a heavenly god realm expert, including reviving the dead. However, enlightened masters would never do such things. Enlightened masters valued the karma of the world more and were more afraid of it. Enlightened masters were not invincible. Their opponents were the rules between heaven and earth. If they violated the rules, they would be punished and there was no way to escape. If the emperor agreed to save second sister, it was obvious that all the public houses would come to the emperor to beg him. Co Tying said, "How would we know if we don't beg?" Sigh. Co Qi shook her head. "If father comes out of isolation, he will beat you to death." He dash. "Oomph." Co. Tying scoffed. The public house's reputation is not that valuable. The public house's reputation and second younger sister's life were clearly more important. As an incompetent father, how could he have the face to punish him? All right, it's good to try. Co. Chi nodded slowly. Although she believed in Chu Li, he only had a 60% chance of success. If it was the emperor, an enlightened master, he should have a 100% chance. It was best not to take the risk, and Chu Li could understand. I'll leave today. The public houses are all depending on you. Co. Tying scoffed. This time, Chu Li made a contribution to the Phoenix Tree faction. Remember this and reward him next time. If this goes on, he will soon reach rank 2. Co. Chi nodded lightly. Co. Tying sighed. If he can destroy the Phoenix Tree faction, he can stop for a few days. Co. Chi nodded. Destroying the Phoenix Tree faction would probably give a shock to the martial arts factions that were ready to make trouble. In recent years, with the decline of the public houses, the martial arts factions within the borders were ready to make trouble. They wanted to challenge the prestige of the public houses. The destruction of the Phoenix Tree faction would probably give them a bucket of cold water to wake them up and let them know what was good for them. She estimated that she could make these martial arts factions behave for a year. Co. Tying said, I'll leave today and travel day and night. I estimate that I can reach Fairy's capital tomorrow and come back after 3 days. Look after second younger sister. Don't let Chu Li mess around. He was afraid that Chu Li would be impulsive and take advantage of his absence to act first and report later. Co. Chi said impatiently, Don't worry. What kind of person do you think Chu Li is? Co. Tying shook his head and said no more. A person who was blinded by love would not have any rationality. He believed that Chu Li was infatuated with second younger sister. That was why he risked his life to save her. That was why he was so eager to release the vitality sealing finger. When Co. Chi returned to the stargazing tower, Chu Li was waiting there. He sat on the 3rd floor and drank tea while chatting with Su Ru. When he saw her return, Chu Li looked at her eagerly. Co. Chi shook her head. Chu Li sighed. Master Xiao, Tying doesn't agree. Big brother wants to beg the emperor, Co. Chi said. Chu Li let out a long sigh. Co. Chi glanced at him. Not disappointed? Chu Li smiled. If the emperor can make a move, that would be great. You are very concerned about second elder sister, Co. Chi said faintly. That's rare. Chu Li smiled embarrassedly. It's not my turn to care about second lady. It's good that you understand. Co. Chi looked at him coldly. Su Ru was very good at reading the situation. Seeing that Lady Xiao Tying was not in a good mood, she quickly changed the topic. Lady Xiao Tying, the Imperial Treasury, sent a few things. They said that Master Xiao Tying wanted to give it to Lady Xiao Tying to play with. What are they? Co. Chi sat on the couch. Su Ru said, There are 2 treasured swords, 2 treasured blades, and 3 secret manuals. Forget about the blades. Send them back, but leave the secret manuals. Co. Chi looked up at Chu Li. Let Chu Li pick one of the swords. Yes. Su Ru got up and opened the purple cabinet. She took out 2 long swords with dark green scabbards and placed them on the coffee table. The Phoenix Tree faction handed them over. Co. Chi said, You pick one and pick another secret manual later. Thank you, lady. Chu Li closed fists, saluted, and smiled. Forget about the secret manual. I won't be polite with the swords. Chapter 151. The Phoenix Tree faction doesn't have any good secret manuals, so pick a treasure sword. Xiao Qi said lightly. You should change your sword. His light body technique was top-notch. If it was matched with a treasure sword, the power of sneak attack would be even more amazing. Chu Li picked up the sword on the left. The dark green scabbard was heavy in his hand. The steady feeling spread from his hand to his body, and it blended with his body. Chu Li immediately liked it. He slowly pulled out the sword, and the gray sword body slowly revealed itself. The sword body seemed to be covered with a layer of dust, and there was no light. It looked more like a wooden sword, giving off a light feeling, but it was heavy in his hand. It was steady, simple and unsophisticated. He focused and looked at it. There were two small words engraved on the blade, modesty. With the light and dust, Chuli muttered. Suru glanced at the long sword and smiled. This sword is a little strange. It doesn't seem to have any edge. It looked like a wooden sword. Could it be that the people below took the wrong one? Chuli smiled. Good sword, I'll borrow Chief's hair. Suru rolled her eyes at him and scoffed. Try and see if you can cut it. As she said this, she plucked out a shiny black hair and placed it 1 meter above the modesty sword. Suddenly, she let go and the hair gently fell. Chuli turned the sword and pointed the blade upwards. The hair fell on the blade and silently broke into 2 pieces. It really is a treasure sword. Suru smiled. It looks a little strange, but it's sharp enough. Let's look at the other one. Chuli put the sword back into the scabbard and picked up the other long sword. The scabbard felt light in his hand, as if it was nothing. Chuli felt like he was pinching a feather as he slowly pulled out the sword. The blade that was as clear as ice reflected a glimmer of light. The blade was thin and light, and its brilliance flowed like a pool of spring water under the bright sun. Good sword. Suru could not help but praise. The body of the sword was crystal clear and flawless, like an ice sculpture. The sword's light was bright and gentle. There was no threatening chill, and it was not sharp. Chuli held the sword like he was dipping his hand into spring water. A cold breath came from his palm. It seemed that the material of the sword was not ordinary. It was light as if it was nothing, and it had the effect of calming one's heart. He concentrated in thought. He vaguely guessed that it might be a sword forged by Shuang. Snowflower was a rare material for forging swords. It was condensed from thousands of years of ice and snow. It was as light as a feather and as hard as cold iron. It also had the ability to clear one's heart. This is a good sword. Chuli, do you want this one? Suru asked. Chuli focused his attention and saw 2 small words carved on the blade. Flawless. He shook his head and said, I still prefer that modesty sword. That gray wooden sword? Suru widened her eyes in disbelief. How beautiful is this sword? Chuli said, I don't like such eye-catching things. Understood. Suru nodded and smiled. One look at the sword you've chosen, and I can tell that you're a sinister person who likes to plot against others. You flatter me. Chuli put on a fake smile. Suru giggled. Am I wrong? Chuli sighed. Chief, I've been wronged. Young Ru is right. Xiao Qi pursed her lips and revealed a charming smile. This modesty sword really suits you. Then I'll kindly accept it. Chuli smiled and hung the modesty sword on his waist. He usually did not carry a sword in the public house, as fighting was not allowed in the public house. He did not need a sword. Even if he wanted a sword, he could return to the courtyard in a flash. Young Ru, where's the secret manual? Xiao Qi asked. Suru put the flawless sword back into the cabinet and took out a box. She placed it on the coffee table. Chuli opened it and saw that one was a palm technique and the other was a fist technique. They were both superior martial arts. He flipped through them. They were imprinted in his mind, but he did not want to practice them. These 2 martial arts were not of much use to him. Xiao Qi saw that he was not very interested and said, Jiang Kuai is very outstanding. You did a good job. Chuli smiled. His light body technique is superb, and he's experienced. It'll be easy for him to stand out. This time, he'll be rewarded with 10,000 taels of silver and a spirit blessing pill. Xiao Qi said, Thank you, lady. This is a formal reward. Xiao Qi waved her hand. You have to persuade him not to go down the old path. The public house is not forgiving. Chuli nodded. In the evening, the setting sun dyed the lake and the island red. On the rose-colored lake, Shui carried a pot of flowers and sailed on a boat. Her snow-white gown was also dyed a rose color by the setting sun. She came to a small island and passed through the forest. She knocked on the door of a small courtyard. Su Yuding's voice came from the courtyard. Who is it? Sister Shu? It's me. Shueling raised her voice. The courtyard door opened, and Su Yuding stood at the door in a light green gown. She smiled like a flower. Shueling, come in. Shueling carried the flower in and smiled. I brought you a moonlight orchid. Moonlight orchid? Su Yuting looked at the orchid in the pot in surprise. It's a moonlight orchid? She also liked flowers and had heard of the famous moonlight orchid. It will glow in a few days, Shuai Ling said. It will be very beautiful. This is too precious. Su Yuting looked at it in admiration and shook her head. The two of them entered the pagoda. Su Yuting lit the charcoal fire in the red clay stove and continued to stare at the moonlight orchid. Shuai Ling said, the moonlight orchid in the public house was cultivated by Master. It has exceeded its lifespan by 3 months, so it is not that precious. Master is in charge of the East Garden. It is not a big deal to move one here. Is it against the public house's rules? Su Yuting asked. Third lady will not punish Master for such a small matter. Shuai Ling smiled. The moonlight orchid is really beautiful, especially at night. I have heard of it for a long time, but I have never seen it, Su Yuting said excitedly. You can't buy it, even if you have money. Shuai Ling nodded. How do I move it out? Su Yuting looked at the pot carefully. It is very easy, Shuai Ling said. Dig some mud from the lake and dry it. Then, dig a hole and put the mud at the bottom. Place the moonlight orchid on top of it and then bury it. Shuai Ling, help me, Su Yuting said. She was afraid that she would accidentally kill the moonlight orchid. That would be a sin. No problem. Let's go to the East Garden and ask Brotherly for some mud. We'll plant it when we come back. Can I go to the East Garden? It is okay. All right then. Su Yuting was tempted. Jiang Kuai asked about the grudge between Chu Li and Gu Litong and told her about it when he came back. She also learned about the East Garden and the West Garden. She knew that they were the best gardens. Then let's go now, Shuai Ling said. The two left the courtyard and came to the East Garden. They stepped onto the shore, and Shuai Ling knocked on the jade chime. Li Yu's bear-like figure appeared quickly. When he saw them, he smiled enthusiastically. Shuai Ling, this lady looks unfamiliar. Madame Jiang, Shuai Ling introduced. Brotherly, I would like to bring Madame Jiang around the East Garden. Welcome, welcome. Li Yu smiled. Feel free to walk around. Brotherly, can you help me prepare some mud from the lake? I will bring it back later. We're going to plant the moonlight orchid. Leave it to me. Shuai Ling brought Su Yuting around the East Garden. Su Yuting's eyes lit up, and she gasped in admiration. The two of them walked around for more than 2 hours. When they returned to Jiang Kuai's courtyard, Shuai Ling casually mentioned that Master wanted to visit tonight. Su Yuting started to get busy. The two of them moved the moonlight orchid out and planted it. Then they started to cook. Chapter 152. The gazebo was brightly lit. Chu Li and Jiang Kuai sat opposite each other. Su Yuting and Shuai Ling sat beside them. Shuai Ling's hands were like jade, pouring wine from the pot from time to time. Brother Jiang Kuai, this time the public house rewarded you with 10,000 taels of silver and a spirit blessing pill. Chu Li said, your first task was a good start. Congratulations. What a coincidence, Jiang Kuai laughed. He was very excited. 10,000 taels of silver was a lot of money, but more importantly, the spirit blessing pill. The spirit blessing pill was a priceless treasure. It was equivalent to a life. No amount of money could buy it. With a spirit blessing pill, he became more courageous. His heart suddenly calmed down, and he was no longer afraid of danger. Actually, Brother Chu Li, I still have to thank you. Jiang Kuai raised a silver cup and drank it in one gulp. He sighed, if it wasn't for Brother Chu Li, I wouldn't have been able to enter the public house. Now that he entered the public house, he understood that at his age, even if his light body technique was superb, he would not be able to enter the public house. To enter the public house, one needed a referral. Ordinary public house guards did not have the qualifications to do so. They needed to be rank 4 and above. Grandmasters could only reach rank 4 protectors. It was even harder to reach rank 4 scribe. Chu Li repeatedly made great contributions and quickly advanced in rank was the first case. Referral into the public house. The referral was the guarantor. If anything went wrong, the referral would be punished. Chu Li tried his best to recruit him. Now that he thought about it, he did not know how to appreciate favors. However, if he knew that the public house protectors were so free, he would have agreed long ago. Chu Li smiled. Brother Jiang Kuai, you don't have to thank me. I have my own selfish motives. The public house needs to strengthen its strength. The more masters there are, the easier it will be for us. This is public service, Jiang Kuai smiled. Chu Li shook his head. I have another selfish motive. I want Brother Jiang Kuai to help me, but I don't have to enter the Glorious courtyard. I can help myself. He had already seen through Jiang Kuai's thoughts. He did not want to enter the Glorious courtyard and did not want to offend too many people. He understood Jiang Kuai's thoughts. He had just arrived and offended too many people. Even with his support, it was difficult for him to move. No problem. Jiang Kuai breathed a sigh of relief and chuckled. Personal help is definitely not a problem. I'll be there anytime. He had been in a dilemma. He was afraid that Chu Li would ask him to enter the Sky Soul Institute. He really didn't want to enter the Sky Soul Institute, but Chu Li had done too much for him. Once he opened his mouth, it would be hard for him to refuse. He did not expect Chu Li to only ask for personal help. Apart from letting out a long sigh of relief, he also felt somewhat guilty and grateful for not entering the Sky Soul Institute. Chu Li sighed to himself. It seemed that it hadn't been easy to open the Sky Soul Institute, so it was best for him to do nothing about it. The House of High Duke had been combed by the mists, and there were only 1 or 2 fish that had slipped through the net. There was no need to open the Glorious courtyard. He would occasionally come here and inform the Mississippi Jiang Kuai. Changed the topic. He raised his glass and smiled. Brother Chu, today at the Martial Arts Hall, everyone is very excited. Destroying the Phoenix Tree faction will greatly increase the ambition of the High Duke's public house. Chu Li nodded. Jiang Kuai said, but I think there's more to it than meets the eye, right? Chu Li smiled. Why do you feel that way, Brother Jiang? There's something wrong with that couple. Jiang Kuai said, so it's not that simple. Chu Li pondered for a moment and sighed. There's indeed an inside story. Jiang Kuai quickly put down the silver cup and listened attentively. Chu Li glanced at Su Yuting. Xueling quickly smiled. Sister Su, let's go take a look at the Moonlight Orchid and let them talk. Su Yuting nodded and bowed to Chu Li. Then, she left the pagoda with Xueling. Chu Li waited until Su Yuting walked far away before he told him what happened. Jiang Kuai's expression changed several times. He was an old fish in Jianghu. He knew that people were sinister and had encountered many conspiracies. After listening to what Chu Li said, he could not help but be speechless. Lu Yurong was too scary. The Ren public house was too scary. Jiang Kuai glanced at Su Yuting, who was far away. Luckily, Chu Li sent her away so she could listen to all this. She was afraid that she could not sleep well. This time, she almost lost 10 protectors of the High Duke's public house. Chu Li said, when you go out to do a mission, you must keep your eyes open and be careful at all times. Yes. Jiang Kuai quickly nodded. He had performed a meritorious deed. He was a little smug at first, but now he woke up and regained his vigilance. Chu Li saw him like this, and his goal was achieved. He smiled. Speaking of which, other than congratulating you for your meritorious deed, I have a private matter to ask of Brother Jiang Kuai. Don't be so polite. Just say it. Jiang Kuai said. Chu Li took out a white jade bottle and handed it to Jiang Kuai. Help me send a spirit blessing pill to a friend. No problem. Where to? Jiang Kuai happily took the white jade bottle. Startling Cloud Association in Cloud State Town. Chu Li said, look for the association leader of Startling Cloud Association, Chun Siu. Tell her that it's from Chun Li. She will understand. Cloud State Town is not far. I can send it over tomorrow. Jiang Kuai said. Chun Siu must be someone very important to Chu Li. One spirit blessing pill was equivalent to 1 life. Who would be willing to give it to someone who is not close to him? Chu Li smiled. Thank you, Brother Jiang Kuai. In the future, if there are such small errands, just leave it to me. Jiang Kuai patted his chest and smiled. In the evening, 3 days later, Chu Li was practicing the sun-cultivating white tiger portrait in the pagoda when Su Ru fluttered over. Her apricot gown made her face look bright and flawless. She entered the courtyard and said, Master, shout, tying is back. Chu Li closed the tiger bone box. Did the emperor agree? No. Su Ru shook her head and entered the pagoda. The emperor isolated himself and did not see outsiders. He invited a high official from the imperial house. Shui Ling said, "It seems that the second lady can be saved." Chu Li frowned. "Do you know the details?" He sighed secretly. As expected, he could not invite the emperor. Su Ru smiled. "Are you afraid that the high official from the imperial house will harm the second lady?" Chu Li said, "I have to understand his cultivation level. After all, it concerns the second lady's life." Su Ru said, "Don't worry. Master Xiao Taiying is very considerate. He is more worried about the second lady. This person is Zhao Zilai, a grandmaster. His cultivation level is one of the best in the imperial house." Chu Li nodded slowly. "How confident is he?" "Only half." Su Ru sighed. "I can see that he is quite reluctant, but he has no choice. The Empress has ordered him to come." Chu Li frowned. "Half? Not as confident as you?" Su Ru said. "Chu Li, give up. Master Xiao Taiying trusts the high official from the imperial house more." Chu Li nodded slowly. If he was Master Xiao Taiying, he would also trust the high official from the imperial house more. The high official's cultivation level was far higher than his. Of course, he was more trustworthy. Su Ru waved her hand and said, "Let's go." She did not wait for Chu Li to speak. She floated out of the pagoda, waved to the back, and disappeared from the entrance of the courtyard. Chu Li's fingers gently tapped on the stone table. His thoughts were tumbling, and he could not calm down. As expected, the emperor did not agree. The empress had done her best to send a martial arts master over. He did not have to worry about the high official's cultivation level. Master Xiao Taiying was not a fool. Shui Ling came over and whispered, "Master, are you worried?" Chu Li shook his head. Shui Ling said, "He is the high official from the imperial house." Chu Li smiled and sighed again. He was far more confident in himself than others. He knew that his mental strength was far stronger than ordinary people. His control of inner energy was far better than ordinary people. If he was only 60% confident, others might not even have 30%. Chapter 153. Su Ru quickly returned. "Master Xiao wants to welcome High Official Zhao and specifically asked you to go." "Let's go." "Want me to go?" Chu Li frowned. Su Ru smiled. "You are a rank 3 scribe now. Other than those old men who are unwilling to move, you have the highest rank." Chu Li smiled and shook his head. He also wanted to see this High Official Zhao. When the lanterns were lit, Chu Li followed Su Ru to Iron Eagle Island. The island was brightly lit and very lively. The maids were in 2s and 3s, and their bodies were light. When they saw Chu Li and Su Ru, they stopped and bowed. Su Ru waved her hand from time to time and brought Chu Li to the hall. There were more than 20 tallow candles in the hall, and it was as bright as day. Co Taiying was talking to a tall old man. Next to Co Taiying was Co Chi. Chu Li had already seen through the omniscient mirror before entering the hall. This tall old man had a round face and the corners of his eyes were curved. He was smiling amiably and looked like he was in his 50s. However, he was a grandmaster. Chu Li speculated that he was over 100 years old. Seeing Chu Li and Su Ru coming over, Co Chi waved her hand. Chu Li closed fist saluted. Co Taiying glanced at Chu Li and pointed to a seat for Chu Li to sit down and talk. He called Chu Li over to put him at ease so that he would not have a knot in his heart. Chu Li was also sincere in saving second sister. He could not hurt his feelings too much. A rank 3 scribe's feelings must be taken care of. "Elder Zhao, this is the chief of Glory's courtyard." Chu Li, Co Taiying smiled. "I heard that Elder Zhao is coming and specially came to pay my respects. Old bones, there is no elegance to speak of." Zhao Zilai waved his hand and laughed. "On the other hand, this little brother has an inner god's will. He could be said to be a young talent. I am far inferior to him when I was young." Chu Li closed fist saluted. "Elder Zhao, you flatter me." "Elder Zhao, do you want to meet Xiao Shi first?" Co Taiying smiled. "It's good to know." "No need, no need." Zhao Zilai smiled. "Don't trouble second lady. Elder Zhao is in Fairy's capital and is knowledgeable. Have you heard of Vitality, Sealing Finger?" Co Chi asked faintly. Zhao Zilai, shook his head and sighed. I have been in the forbidden area for a long time, and I have heard of Vitality Sealing Finger. This is the biggest taboo in the Forbidden Land. Sigh. Co. Tying shook his head and sighed. I really don't know who could be so vicious. It's something that happened more than 10 years ago. I can't find out anything even if I wanted to. There are not many people who know about Vitality Sealing. Zhao Zilai said, we can always find one. This Vitality Sealing Finger is formless and formless. Co. Tying sighed. I wonder who could have such a malicious heart. Even if we can't catch him, the heavenly way will not spare him. Zhao Zilai comforted. The cycle of karma will not let him get away with it. I hope so. Co. Tying sighed. Chuli did not say a word and quietly looked at Zhao Zilai. Through the omniscient mirror, he realized that Zhao Zilai's cultivation level was indeed profound. It was a notch higher than Zhao Qingshan, but not much higher than Zhao Qingshan. After all, Zhao Qingshan was already a top-notch grandmaster. While he was investigating, he also observed Zhao Zilai's thoughts, and his heart sank. Just as the banquet was about to start, Chu Li said, Master Xiao Tying, Lady Xiao, aren't you going to greet Elder Zhao? Elder Zhao? Xiao Qi glanced at him. They deliberately did not greet Zhao Qingshan. A king would not meet another king. If Zhao Qingshan saw Zhao Zilai, he would definitely not be happy. Why should they make things difficult for him? Chu Li was experienced in human relations. He knew that there must be a reason for him to say this. Chu Li nodded seriously. Elder Zhao is also a grandmaster. He must be on good terms with High Official Zhao. Xiao Qi took a deep look at Chu Li and looked at Xiao Ting. Big brother, please invite Elder Zhao over. All right. Xiao Tying glanced at Chu Li expressionlessly and raised his voice. Lin Quan, invite Elder Zhao over too. Yes, master. Lin Quan responded and quietly left the hall. Zhao Qingshan, right? Zhao Zilai smiled. Speaking of which, we are old acquaintances. Is he used to staying in the public house? Chu Li closed fists, saluted, and smiled. Fortunately, Elder Zhao is here. Otherwise, under the pressure of the Ren public house, our days will be even more difficult. Oh, Zhao Zilai smiled and shook his head. The public house is not weak. How can it be so unbearable? Master Co is too modest. Zhao Qingshan followed Lin Quan to the hall and stepped into the hall. When he saw Zhao Zilai, he was stunned. Why are you here? Zhao Zilai smiled. Elder Zhao, we haven't seen each other for a long time. You're not dead yet. Zhao Qingshan said coldly. Zhao Zilai laughed. You're not dead yet. How can I bear to die? We are old friends. Let's have a drink. You flatter me. Zhao Qingshan sneered and closed fists, saluted. Master, third lady, I am not on good terms with him. It is awkward to be together with him. It is better for me to leave first. Co. Tying smiled. Elder Zhao, the visitor is a guest. Sit down. Xiao Qi glanced at Chu Li. Chu Li smiled and did not say anything. He secretly concentrated on what the two were thinking. Zhao Qingshan sat next to Chu Li and remained silent. Zhao Zilai shook his head and laughed. Master Co, we are old enemies. We became enemies when we were young. After so many years, seeing him as strong as before, it really makes me feel emotional. Not at all. Co Tying smiled. This time, I have a trouble High Official Zhao. Sigh. Master Co, I'm really not sure. Zhao Zilai shook his head and smiled bitterly. In terms of cultivation level, I am not much stronger than Elder Zhao. If it is not dare, I am the same. Zhao Qingshan's face darkened and did not speak. He secretly scolded Zhao Zilai for his sinister intentions. It was obvious that he was trying to sow discord. Co. Tying said helplessly, no matter what, I have to try. I can't watch my sister slowly wait for death, right? Chu Li interrupted again. Master Co, could it be that the Rin public house plotted against the second lady? Impossible? Co. Tying frowned. This Chu Li, he really did not know what he wanted to do. Chu Li said, looking at Lu Yurong's means, it may be the Rin public house. High Official Zhao, do you know Lu Yurong? The lady of the Rin public house. Zhao Zilai smiled. I have seen her before. Chu Li said, Lu Yurong's means are insidious. This kind of thing is definitely done. Zhao Zilai did not comment. Co Tying said impatiently, "How old is Lu Yurong?" Chu Li smiled faintly. "She is still young." "What about her master?" "High official, Zhao should know her master, right?" Young brother Chu's words are interesting. Zhao Zilai waved his hand and laughed. Chu Li smiled. To be able to teach someone like Lu Yurong, her master must be a powerful person. It's a pity that we can't know each other. What a pity. Co Chi had been quietly watching and did not speak. Chu Li's behavior was completely different from his usual calm demeanor. There must be a reason. Now it seemed that there was a problem with this high official Zhao. Chu Li then followed the rules and did not speak anymore. After Zhao Zilai and Zhao Qingshan left, there were only 5 people left in the hall. Chu Li, what's going on? Co Chi did not wait for Co Ting to get angry and directly asked, "Is he really related to Lu Yurong?" Suru also looked at him curiously. Chu Li sighed. "My lady, I'm afraid so." Suru quickly asked, "What's the relationship?" Chu Li said, "The relationship between Zhao Zilai and Lu Yurong's master is not ordinary." Co Tying's face was gloomy. He knew that Chu Li had a special skill similar to third younger sisters, or even better. He thought that he was open and above board. There was nothing that he could not say to others. He dared to use Chu Li. However, Chu Li had a weakness. He was too young. Young people's temperament had not been sharpened, and their temperament was unstable. It was easy to be impulsive and do bad things. Even if he had a special skill, it was difficult to control his nature. Co Tying scoffed. "I don't even know who Lu Yurong's master is." Chu Li said, "I don't know who Lu Yurong's master is, but I know that he has a close relationship with Zhao Zilai. With a little test, I found out. My lady, you also noticed that his expression was strange, right?" Co Chi nodded lightly. "High official Zhao's identity is different. We can't just speculate." Co Tying said impatiently. Chapter 154. Ow! Co Tying was dubious. Chu Li said, "Imitate Lu Yurong's symbol and ask him out. You need him to believe it." Co Tying shook his head. "Don't think he's stupid. He's more than 100 years old, and he's smarter than us. How could he not notice what you said just now? Of course, the premise is that there's something wrong with him. I don't need to worry about him not falling for it," Chu Li said. Co Tying was interested. How? He saw Chu Li's confident look and was dubious. Chu Li said, "Lady Xiao knows the Rin Public House's secret communication code, right?" Co Chi nodded. "Yes, I know a little. Ask him to meet in Lu Yurong's name." Chu Li smiled. "He'll most likely fall for it." Sura shook her head. "He won't fall for it so easily." Chu Li smiled and said nothing. "It's good to try," Co Chi said. She glanced at Co Tying. Co Tying snorted and did not comment. There was nothing wrong with testing him. If Zhao Zilai was innocent and he could not detect it, then he must not make a move no matter what. Chu Li, Co Chi, and Suru stood on the boat. The boat floated on the lake. A bright moon hung high in the night sky. The moonlight shone on the lake, and it was cool and pleasant. The lake breeze was gentle and refreshing. "Is there really something wrong with him?" Co Chi said lightly. Chu Li said, "I can't say much in front of Master Co Tying. There's definitely something wrong with Zhao Zilai. I can't let him make a move. I'm afraid that if I say this, Master Co Tying will suspect that I have ulterior motives." "Aren't you afraid that Lady Xiao Qi will suspect that you have ulterior motives?" Suru scoffed. Chu Li smiled. Co Chi glanced at Suru and said lightly, "He has a relationship with Lu Yurong. He may not dare to harm second eldest sister. What if Lu Yurong looks for him personally?" Chu Li said. Co Chi looked at him thoughtfully. Chu Li said, "Lu Yurong might do it. Lu Yurong will look for him personally?" Suru suddenly realized and pointed at Chu Li. "Oh, I understand now. No wonder you're so sure that he will fall for it." Chu Li scoffed. "Consider it as borrowing Lu Yurong's influence." Suru immediately understood Chu Li's idea. He wanted to steal Lu Yurong's victory. Zhao Zilai knew that Lu Yurong would come looking for him, so they rushed ahead of Lu Yurong. He left a message with the Rin public house's secret code. If he really had a problem, he would fall for it. Chu Li, you're really cunning. Su Ru scoffed. Chu Li said, for the second lady, this is the only way. Miss, can we find Lu Yurong? If we're always on the defensive, there will be a time when we can't defend ourselves. We have to strike first. You haven't seen Lu Yurong, have you? No. Find an opportunity. Let's meet her, Xiao Qi said. Suru said, that's not easy. Lu Yurong almost always stays in the residence. My lady, we've only met her once. Chu Li asked curiously, is Lu Yurong not leaving the public house? Strategizing in a tent will determine victory from 1,000 miles away. Xiao Qi said, Lu Yurong will make all the plans in advance. She will calculate all the routes, and we just need to follow the plan. She has calculated all the accidents? Chu Li frowned. Xiao Qi said, most likely. It's really scary. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. He knew that he could not do this. Although he had a high IQ, he was not good at scheming. This Lu Yurong was really scary. Xiao Qi said, she's quite mysterious. I've only met her once by chance. What kind of person is she? Chu Li asked. He could not help but be curious. He activated the omniscient mirror to look at the scenery in her mind. On a beautiful maroon horse, a young girl with a white veil galloped past. She was a graceful woman in a moon-white gown, but her face could not be seen clearly. Xiao Qi shook her head. I can't see through her mind. She pondered and looked at Chu Li deeply. She could see through other people's thoughts, but she could not see through Chu Li's. He was like a pool of clear water, calm and unperturbed. She was far more sensitive than ordinary people. She could feel that she was being spied on, and Chu Li had the ability to read minds. Just now her heart moved. It should be him reading her mind. Chu Li said, looks like I have to go to the Rin public house. Jiang Kuai is proficient in the bone shrinking technique. You should learn from him. Xiao Qi said lightly. Change your appearance and get close to the Rin public house. You might have a chance to meet Lu Yurong. She has been staying in the public house, but on a special day, she will come out. Lu Yurong visited her brother's grave every year. Not everyone can learn the bone shrinking technique. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. The bone shrinking technique was not a top-notch martial art. It was just a very shallow heart technique. Because it was shallow, it was more difficult to cultivate. It was easy to get started, but it was almost difficult to perfect it and reach Jiang Kuai's level. Most people who cultivated it could only make themselves a little shorter, and they could only persist for a while. Unlike Jiang Kuai, not only could he shrink his whole body, but he could also maintain it for a day. Chu Li estimated that the reason he could cultivate the bone shrinking technique to such a level was the same as his light body technique. It was all because of the strange fruit he ate, which changed his physique. In the early morning, Zhao Zilai woke up from his meditation, feeling refreshed. He came to the courtyard and breathed in the fresh air. His whole body felt comfortable. It was completely different from the dry air in Fairy's capital. The air here was moist and fresh. Just breathing, it was a great enjoyment. Unfortunately, he could not stay here for long. Fairy's capital was his home. A maid served him food. After he ate, he walked out of the courtyard and strolled by the lake. The island he was on was a fine house. The courtyard was exquisite and elegant. The rockery and water were all made by famous artists. It was extraordinary, but compared to the imperial house, it was ordinary. He strolled around the island and slowly made his way back. He suddenly stopped, and his eyes swept across a rockery by the roadside. He clearly saw the pattern on a stone on the rockery. At first glance, the pattern looked like a natural pattern on the stone. It was not obvious, but he could tell at a glance that it was Lu Yurong's unique symbol. He was surprised. This Lu girl really came to find him? She was very resourceful. He thought that there were many Lu Yurong spies in the Yi public house. As soon as he arrived, she knew and came to find him. He glanced at the pattern and thought about it carefully. He read the message contained in the pattern and continued to return to the courtyard. He sat in the courtyard and read. When a maid served tea, Zhao Zilai casually asked a few questions about the environment here. The maid carefully answered. He waved his hand, indicating that the maid did not need to serve him. He wanted to stay quietly. He had a quiet day. Co. Tying did not come again and let him rest quietly for a day. When the lanterns were lit, he told the maid that he would not eat dinner. Then, he boarded the boat and left the public house. He walked along the street to the Sky Inn. The Sky Inn was the largest restaurant in Chongming Town. It was 3 stories high and majestic. He felt that it was not inferior to the restaurants in Fairy's capital. After a few glances, he went up to the 3rd floor. When he saw a person sitting at a table by the window, his heart sank. Chapter 155. Elder Zhao. Co. Tang raised his hand to greet him. His handsome face showed a smile. Come and sit with us. Zhao Zilai's mind was racing. Was it a coincidence, or was he fooled? Maybe they just happened to appear in this place at this time. After all, Sky Inn was the largest restaurant in Chongming Town. It was not surprising for Co. Tying to come here for a meal. Or was he waiting for him here? He was very sure and did not panic at all. Whether Co. Tying was here by coincidence or on purpose, he was a high official of the imperial house. Co. Tying could not do anything to him. He smiled and went over. Master Co., you are here too. Hee, it is really a coincidence. Co. Tying stared at him with a fake smile on his face. If I knew that Elder Zhao wanted to come over for a meal, I would have invited you. Let's sit at the same table. What do you think? He secretly sneered. Chuli really guessed it right. How could there be such a coincidence? What made him even more depressed was that even if he knew that he was involved with Lu Yurong, he could not do anything to him. The high official of the imperial house had a high status. As the elder master of the public house, he could not reach that far. All right. Zhao Zilai sat at the table and smiled at Lin Quan. Lin Quan smiled humbly and bowed to show his respect. Brother Lin Quan is also considered a top-notch master. Zhao Zilai laughed. You don't look like one. Lin Quan smiled. You flatter me. Co. Tying said, Elder Zhao, is there anything wrong with our hospitality? It's pretty good. Zhao Zilai smiled. I always like to wander around. I like to be carefree, and I don't like to be tied down. I want to take this opportunity to walk around Chongming Town. Elder Zhao, feel free to do as you please. If you have any instructions, just let the maid know. I will do my best as a host. Co. Tying smiled. At this time, tea was served in the tavern. Lin Quan got up to take it and handed it to Zhao Zilai. Zhao Zilai took the teacup and smiled. I wonder when will you unseal the second lady's vitality finger? The sooner it's done, the better. I can also stroll around to my heart's content. No hurry, no hurry. Co. Tying picked up the teacup and slowly took a sip. Let my sister rest for a few days first. It's too late for regrets. He believed 70 to 80% of Chu Li's judgment. Even if it was a coincidence today and he wronged Zhao Zilai, he could not let him remove the vitality sealing finger. I can't take the risk. Second sister only has one life. That's true. Zhao Zilai put down the teacup and smiled. But I want to see second miss first and see her condition. Of course. Co. Tying nodded and smiled. Of course, we have to meet him before we make our move. Zhao Zilai said, the young lad at yesterday's banquet is already a 3rd-rank imperial bodyguard at such a young age. He is really amazing. Chuli. Co. Tai Ying's face darkened. He scoffed unhappily. He is indeed a genius. However, his temperament is wild and unruly. Please don't laugh at him, Elder Zhao. He's a young man. It's inevitable. Zhao Zilai shook his head and smiled. It's hard to be calm at such a young age. Train him well. Co. Tying laughed. He's still young. The future is still long. Zhao Zilai sighed and said, it's a pity that I didn't see the High Duke. I wonder where is the High Duke now? Co. Tying's face darkened. He quickly regained his smile. Father is cultivating in isolation. He has already instructed me not to disturb him. As his son, I dare not disobey him. This Zhao Zilai was so annoying. He touched my sore spot. Sigh. The High Duke's elegant demeanor is still fascinating. Zhao Zilai shook his head and sighed. It's a pity that I can't see him. Co. Tying smiled and changed the topic. Come. Elder Zhao, try Sky Brothel's signature dish, crystal beef with radish. The bartender served a big bowl of dishes. The aroma filled the air. After the meal, Co. Taiying returned to Iron Eagle Island with a gloomy face. He sat on the armchair in the hall and sneered, "Zhao Zilai." Lin Quan lowered his eyebrows and said gently, "Master, there's no need to be angry. Older people tend to have a strange temper. It's fine as long as you don't lower yourself to his level." "Oomph." Co. Taiying sneered. "I think he's deliberately angering me." Lin Quan, "Do you think he's suspicious?" Lin Quan smiled. "Master, I don't dare to say. Don't give me that. Hurry up and say it." Co. Taiying said impatiently. Lin Quan said, "If we're talking about suspicious, he's the high official of the imperial house. He's usually high and mighty. It's not strange for him to say something unpleasant. Just because of this, you suspect him of colluding with the Rin public house. Isn't that too rash?" Co. Taiying scoffed. Lin Quan smiled embarrassedly. "Of course, it's indeed a little suspicious. It's too much of a coincidence. Old people become crafty." "That's right." Co. Taiying pointed at him. Lin Quan chuckled. Co. Taiying said, "No matter what, we don't dare to use this Zhao Zilai anymore." Lin Quan said, "If it doesn't work, we can hire another high official from the imperial house. This time, the Empress is giving face to the High Duke's public house. If we don't use this one, we'll be asking for it." Co. Taiying scoffed. Lin Quan said, "What should we do?" "Let me think again." Co. Taiying frowned. "We can always find a master. I know that master has a close friend." Lin Quan looked at him carefully and whispered, "He's a grandmaster." "Who is he?" Co. Taiying asked coldly. Lin Quan said, "Thunder Guiding Blade, Feng Jiuyang." "Thunder Guiding Blade." Co. Taiying thought for a while and frowned. "He's good friend with master?" Thunder Guiding Blade was famous. His blade was like a thunderbolt. It was as fast as lightning and unavoidable. Even though he had not been seen for more than 10 years, his reputation did not fade. "It's a friendship of life and death." Lin Quan nodded. "However, Thunder Guiding Blade has gone into seclusion and Master has isolated himself. We haven't seen each other for more than 10 years. I don't know how he's doing now. If he hasn't abandoned his martial arts, he'll be a top-notch master." "I've heard of Thunder Guiding Blade." Co. Taiying nodded slowly. "Since his martial arts is good, let's give it a try." Co. Taiying could not care less about his pride and anger. He would not care about his father's friend. Lin Quan quickly said, "Then we have to send people to look for him. After he went into seclusion, he never came out. I'm afraid that he's isolated himself like master." "Or, why did he go into seclusion?" Co. Taiying asked. "Is it really because of a woman?" There was a rumor in the martial arts world that Thunder Guiding Blade went into seclusion because of a woman. "It seems like it," Lin Quan whispered. Co. Taiying frowned and looked at him. Lin Quan whispered, "It seems to have something to do with Second Madam." Co. Taiying scoffed. He did not want to ask too much about the grudges of the older generation. However, this matter was related to Second Sister's life. He had to look into it. Lin Quan said, "Thunder Guiding Blade also liked Second Madam. After Second Madam passed away, he was disheartened and went into seclusion. Since his martial arts is so good, he won't die. We have to find him." Co. Taiying said. Lin Quan said, "I'm afraid it won't be that easy. Even if he did not isolate himself, he would go into seclusion. If there are not many people around, it would be hard to find him. After so many years, there were only a few people who could recognize Thunder Guiding Blade. At least, the eyes and ears of the public house could not recognize him." "Master, we can't be careless with Zhao Zilai." Lin Quan said, "After all, he's a high official of the imperial house. Just treat him well." Co. Taiying scoffed. "Don't let him find fault with us." "Yes." Lin Quan nodded. Chapter 156. Zhao Zilai went out of Sky Inn and chatted in Chongming town. The streets were bustling with people and carriages, bustling with activity, which made him experience a different kind of prosperity. The fairies' capital was also very prosperous, but it was different from here. It was less noisy and not lively enough. As he grew older, he preferred lively places and did not want to stay in a house alone. It was as if he was the only one left in the world, alone. More than 100 years passed in a flash. Most of his friends had passed away. The old friends who were still alive could be counted with 2 hands. As a high official of the imperial house, he had no choice but to meet his old friends at will. Walking on the bustling street, he let the noisy atmosphere wash away his loneliness. "Grandpa, Grandpa!" A little girl ran up to him. She was only as tall as his waist. She was thin and small with a red flower on her head. She smiled and said, "Grandpa, there's a big brother who asked me to give you a letter." Her little hand struggled to hold up a letter in her hand. "Hee, little girl, which big brother?" Zhao Zilai smiled and squatted down. Grandmasters had an intuition for danger and were not afraid of plots. The little girl said, "Big brother said his surname is Liu. Grandpa will know once you hear it." "Surname Liu." Zhao Zilai took the letter and smiled. "Okay, thank you, little girl." He took out a piece of silver from his arms and gave it to the little girl. "Thank you, Grandpa." The little girl took the silver and ran away happily. She went into the crowd and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Zhao Zilai opened the letter and took out the letter to read a few words. He frowned and thought about it. He carefully looked at the pattern on the lower left corner of the letter. This was a unique pattern of an old friend. Only she used it, and others did not know. The expression on his face was complicated and changed several times. Suddenly, he smiled and rubbed his hands. The letter and envelope turned into powder at the same time and drifted away from his fingers. He clapped and rubbed his hands. After cleaning the powder, he walked on the street with his hands behind his back. Chu Li was cultivating the sentient menace. After cultivating the sun, cultivating white tiger portrait, he cultivated the sentient menace again. His progress was extremely fast. At the 5th level of bone training, his bones became harder and denser. A cool breath flowed between his bones. His strength became stronger and stronger. An ordinary sword thrust was accompanied by a whistling sound. He was extremely fast, and with the help of his inner force, his speed was even faster than lightning. As his strength increased, the speed of his flying blades became faster. Chu Li felt that if he continued to improve and mastered the 5th level, his strength would be so strong that even a grandmaster would not be able to dodge his flying blades. Someone knocked on the door of the courtyard. Xueling opened the door, curtsied, and invited Xiao Qi and Suru in. Xiao Qi wore a snow-white gown, while Suru wore an apricot gown. The two of them went to the gazebo and sat in front of Chu Li. Chu Li closed fist saluted. "Master Xiao Taiying is back." Xiao Qi frowned. "Zhao Zilai is indeed untrustworthy. Big brother will not use him." "What do you plan to do then, Master Xiao Taiying?" Chu Li asked. "Seek help from the Empress again?" Xiao Qi said faintly. "How did Big Brother tell the Empress? Could it be that there's something wrong with Zhao Zilai, and she doesn't want to use him?" Chu Li asked. "Are you going to look for martial arts masters elsewhere?" No matter what, the eldest young master would not feel at ease with himself. He would rather find an expert from the outside. He understood the eldest young master's thoughts. He was still in the innate realm. After all, there was a huge gap between the innate mastery and the grandmaster. Since it involved the second lady's life, he had no choice but to take the risk and trust himself. "Big brother wants to find the thunder guiding blade," Xiao Qi said. Chu Li searched his mind. "Feng Zhuyong? He is indeed a top-notch grandmaster. Can you find him?" Feng Zhuyong is father's best friend, but he has been in seclusion for more than 10 years. "It will probably take a while to find him," Xiao Qi said. "It also depends on luck." Chu Li frowned. People who lived in seclusion in the mountains often hid themselves. If they did not hide well, the past grudges would still come looking for them. It was impossible to retire. Once you enter the martial arts world, you had no choice. How could you just retreat? The world today was different from where he was in his previous life. There were mountains and forests everywhere. If you hid inside, you would not be able to find him. If it was a top-notch martial arts master, it was even more impossible to find him. They were not afraid of beasts and could live deep in the mountains. They were self-sufficient and did not rely on the outside world at all. Lady Xiao, High Duke, Chuli asked carefully. If High Duke personally took action, he would be able to solve this problem. Xiao Qi shook her head. It's useless. No one could find him now. It's harder than finding the Thunder Guiding Blade. Isn't he in seclusion? He is not in seclusion in the public house. He is looking for a quiet place, Xiao Qi said lightly. He did not tell anyone. Suru kept signaling him with her eyes. Chuli sighed. Then we can only find a Thunder Guiding Blade? There are no other masters? The key is to be trustworthy. Xiao Qi shook her head. Besides, there are not many people who can compare to Sir Zhao. Chuli said that Shi Wu is powerful. It's even more impossible for him. Xiao Qi smiled. Shi Wu's position in the Ren public house was the same as Zhao Qingshan's position in the Yi public house. The chief high official master was the sharpest sword. Chuli said, Shi Wu is often outside. Xiao Qi said lightly, Lu Yurong's schemes mostly rely on him. She is worried about others. Chuli pondered. The Ren public house is likely to have an even more powerful master, so there is no need for Shi Wu to hold the fort. Xiao Qi frowned. Chuli said, Lady Xiao, do you think there is such a possibility? Xiao Qi thought about it and slowly nodded. It's not impossible, so we still have to be careful. Chuli said, don't fall into Lu Yurong's trap. If there's only one option, Lu Yurong might be able to predict it. Xueling served a white jade teacup and quietly left. Chuli opened the teacup and took a sip of tea. Even if Lu Yurong is so calculative, she can't have thought of this Thunder Guiding Blade, right? Xiao Qi drank the white jade teacup and slowly said, it's okay. The Thunder Guiding Blade is not something they can touch whenever they want. The Thunder Guiding Blade was famous because of the Thunder Guiding Blade. He was not afraid of being surrounded. His blade was fast, and his body movement technique was fast. Among the masters in the world, there were only a few who could kill him. Chuli shook his head. I'm not afraid of them killing the Thunder Guiding Blade. If I were Lu Yurong, I would use the Thunder Guiding Blade as bait and set up an ambush. Even if the High Duke's public house knows there is an ambush, we still have to go in, right? You want to go? Xiao Qi said lightly. Chuli smiled and said, I can act as a pawn and scout the path ahead. This time, Big Brother's going personally, Xiao Qi said. Master Xiao Taiying is going personally. Chuli frowned, but did not say much. It was not surprising for Master Xiao Taiying to go personally. As a junior, he needed to ask for help. Of course, he had to show courtesy and sincerity. However, Master Xiao Taiying was the stabilizing force of the High Duke's public house. He was in charge. How could he risk it? If something bad happened to him, the High Duke's public house would be in chaos. Xiao Qi said, be prepared. First, we have to spread out our manpower to find the Thunder Guiding Blade. Yes, Chuli nodded. The two girls left the courtyard. Not long after, Su Ru returned and said to Chuli, the high official from the Imperial House asked you to be his tour guide. He wants to tour Chongming Town tomorrow. Chuli was surprised. Me? He said he likes young talents and wants to get close to you. Suru nodded and smiled. Treat him well tomorrow. Don't be impolite and let him pick out any mistakes. Chapter 157. In the early morning of the next day, Chuli finished his cultivation and sailed to the island where the abode was located. Xueling steered the boat, while Chuli stood at the bow in a green robe with his hands behind his back. There seemed to be a light gauze curtain slowly unfolding on the lake. The thin water vapor was clearly visible. The morning air was particularly fresh and moist. When he took a breath, it was as if his lungs were cleansed. The turbid air dissipated and his whole body felt refreshed. His mood inexplicably became better. Xueling wore a bluish-white gown, and her face was as white as jade. Master, what does High Official Zhao mean? Chuli shook his head. Xueling scoffed. I think he's up to no good. Master, what is your status? How can you have time to accompany him? Chuli laughed. My status is far inferior to him. Xueling pouted her red lips. Chuli said, Don't have this attitude later. He is a guest from afar. It is my duty to be the host. If I don't go, who will go? Will Master shout Tai Ying and the lady accompany him personally? Where are we going today? Shui Ling asked. Let's see what High Official Zhao thinks. Shui Ling scoffed and accelerated the boat. Since she reached the innate mastery's boundary, she no longer needed to row the boat. She could use her inner energy to drive the boat. She liked to sail the boat and never got tired of it. Chuli knew that this novelty could only last for a while before it dissipated. She drove the boat very fast, and in a short while, they arrived at the island where the abode was located. However, she found that Zhao Zilai was already standing on the shore waiting. Zhao Zilai wore a purple robe and looked amiable. Chu Li Fist saluted from afar. Sorry for making Senior Zhao wait for so long. Hee, I just arrived too, Zhao Zilai smiled and said. Then let's go straight to Skyin for breakfast. His burning gaze moved away from Chu Li and landed on Shui Ling. He stared at her cold and elegant face, her plump and perky breasts, her slender waist, and her round, peach-like buttocks. Shui Ling frowned, and her face became colder. She felt that his gaze was like a solid substance, like a pair of hands slowly caressing her. She suddenly had goosebumps and felt disgusted. She was already used to the gazes of others and could turn a blind eye to them. However, this kind of intense and oppressive gaze was a little unbearable for her. Please. Chuli took a step forward and stood in front of Shui Ling. He smiled and said, Senior Zhao, please. Zhao Zilai chuckled twice and flew up lightly, displaying his exquisite qigong. His figure turned in the air, forming a circular arc, and he wanted to land behind Shui Ling. Shui Ling was shocked. Chuli turned around and reached out his hand, wrapping his arm around her slender waist. Then, he turned around and swapped their positions. As soon as Zhao Zilai landed, Chuli turned around and faced him. Zhao Zilai chuckled and glanced at Shui Ling, who was blocked by Chuli. He shook his head and laughed. It seems that young Chuli is very concerned about this maid. Chuli replied calmly, She's my personal maid. Senior Zhao, let's go. Shui Ling bit her red lips and leaned against his back. The feeling of safety and warmth filled her heart. She turned her head and did not look at Zhao Zilai. Chuli steered the boat forward and soon reached the shore. After he and Zhao Zilai went ashore, he turned around and said to Shui Ling, Go back and do what I asked you to do. Yes. Although Shui Ling was surprised, she answered straightforwardly. She knew that Chu Li had changed his mind. He originally wanted her to follow. After all, it would be too unsightly if there was no one to serve tea or water. It would be beneath their dignity to let them do this kind of thing themselves. It would also seem that the public house did not treat them well. Zhao Zilai chuckled and waved his hand. Don't. It's good to have this lady follow us. What's the point of us two men? It's much more interesting with this lady, isn't it? Chu Li smiled. She still has something to do. It can't be delayed. What's the big deal? Zhao Zilai shook his head and laughed. It's good to have someone else do it. Don't tell me that this old man is a man-eating spirit beast. Chu Li smiled and looked at Zhao Zilai deeply. My maid is timid. She can't stand being scared by Elder Zhao. It's better to spare her. You can go. He did not wait for Zhao Zilai to say anything and waved his hand to let Shui Ling leave. Shui Ling did not even look at Zhao Zilai and steered the boat away. Zhao Zilai was surprised. This lady is actually an innate master. I really misjudged her. Chuli smiled faintly. She's quite hardworking. Senior Zhao, let's go. I like this lady very much. Zhao Zilai walked slowly and smiled. If I ask Master Xiao Taiying to come over, I think Master Xiao Taiying will not refuse. Chuli smiled and shook his head. Master Xiao Taiying will not agree. He did not know about other public houses. The scribes and protectors of the public house were not private property. Everything had the public house's rules. The public house's rules were the cornerstone of the public house. No matter how bold Master Xiao Taiying was, he would not dare to break it and act arbitrarily. Oh, Zhao Zilai chuckled. Do you want me to try? Senior Zhao is so young, but you're still strong. I really admire you. Chuli smiled. There was a murderous intent in his heart, but his smile became more easygoing. Sigh, there's no other way. Zhao Zilai shook his head and said, I've lived for too long. Time is hard to bear. I have to find something interesting to pass the time. Women are the most wonderful things in the world. God specially created them to entertain us men. Chu Li chuckled. Young Chu Li, don't take women too seriously. Otherwise, you won't be able to enjoy them. Instead, you'll end up with a body full of injuries. You're asking for trouble. Zhao Zilai shook his head and was filled with emotions. Chu Li smiled. Senior Zhao has been injured by a woman before? Hee hee. Zhao Zilai shook his head and laughed. Young Chu Li, it's not a good thing to be too smart. You won't live long. Thank you for your concern, Senior Zhao. Chu Li smiled and said, Lu Yurong's master must be an amazing woman. She must have hurt Senior Zhao very deeply. Zhao Zilai's eyes flashed, and the cold air around him surged. This was a scar that he could not heal for a long time. For many years, no one dared to expose it. This brat in front of him, who did not know his own limits, repeatedly exposed this scar. He really deserved to die. Chu Li pretended not to know and smiled casually. Lu Yurong's master surname is Fu, right? You know quite a lot. Zhao Zilai kept the smile on his face and snorted with a cold face. What's the name of the little girl just now? Fu Yueying. Chu Li smiled. Senior Fu Yueying must be a scheming person, right? The two of them went out of the house of Duke South Gate and strolled along the street. They seemed to be leisurely chatting casually. Zhao Zilai's heart was filled with murderous intent. A smile appeared on his face again. There was no need to be angry with a dead person. It seems that the House of Duke is indeed well informed. They are the dogs of the royal family. He was originally entrusted by Lu Yurong to kill Chu Li. He felt a little regretful. Chu Li had reached rank 3 at such a young age. He had a promising future, and it was a pity to kill him. However, he had offended Lu Yurong and could only die. But now he changed his mind. This kid really deserved to die. No wonder Lu Yurong wanted to kill him. Chu Li smiled and said, The House of Duke is the dogs of the royal family. What about Senior Zhao? If Senior Zhao and the House of Duke were to fight, I don't know if the royal family will side with the House of Duke. Or you, Senior Zhao? Zhao Zilai's smile disappeared again, and he sneered. Young Chu Li, do you want to try? Chu Li smiled and shook his head. That's not necessary. I still have to give face to the Empress. Even if I don't do it for the sake of the monks, I still have to do it for the sake of the Buddha. Good. Good. Zhao Zilai put on a smile again. Young people are really ignorant and fearless. Chapter 158. Chu Li laughed. The older you are in the martial world, the more timid you are. But I think Senior Zhao Zilai is an exception. You have a lot of guts. Compared to you, young Chu, I am much smaller. Zhao Zilai laughed. Chu Li shook his head and said, Being in the House of High Duke, you want to kill a rank 3 scribe of the House of High Duke. Is Senior Zhao Zilai sure that the House of High Duke will not retaliate? Zhao Zilai's expression changed slightly and then returned to a smile. What you said is interesting. He was secretly surprised. How did Chu Li know about the news he received last night? The symbol on the letter was different from the symbol seen in the House of High Duke. Only 3 people in the world knew about it. One was Lu Yurong's master, another was Lu Yurong, and the last one was himself. Because this symbol belonged to Lu Yurong's master, not Lu Yurong herself. Chu Li smiled and said no more. The two walked slowly with their own thoughts and finally arrived at the Sky Inn. Let's go in and eat. We have to eat our fill, Zhao Zilai laughed. What do you say, young Chu? Chu Li understood the meaning in his words. He wanted to send him on his way. He had to eat his fill before his death. He smiled. Yes, no matter what we do, we have to eat our fill. It seems that great minds think alike. Let's go up. Zhao Zilai laughed. The two went up to the Sky Inn and ordered a few side dishes, white steamed buns, sugar steamed buns, and 4 kinds of porridge. Zhao Zilai pinched a sugar steamed bun and slowly took a bite. Then he drank a mouthful of refreshing vegetable porridge. His face was full of enjoyment and satisfaction. He smiled and said, Young Chu, you are from the Temple of Autumn, right? Chu Li frowned, and his heart sank. Soon he smiled again. Yes, I grew up in the Temple of Autumn. Senior Zhao Zilai's descendants are all outstanding. His 4 sons are all innate masters. The eldest son is a grandmaster. It is really gratifying to have a successor. The sugar-steamed bun in Zhao Zilai's hand was pinched flat. He laughed twice. Young Chu, you are so powerful at such a young age. Are all the monks in the Temple of Autumn also so high in cultivation? Chu Li smiled. The disciples of the Temple of Autumn do not practice martial arts and are not as good as Senior Zhao Zilai. There are also many outstanding grandchildren. 2 innate masters, it is really rare. What he read from Zhao Zilai's mind could be used to threaten him. Zhao Zilai shook his head and sighed. It is my fault that the descendants are incompetent. Chu Li said, Senior Zhao has entered the imperial house, so naturally, he won't be able to teach them personally. However, with Senior Zhao around, the people of the martial arts world will have to be cautious, so Senior Zhao has to be cautious. If anything were to happen, who would be able to protect them? Zhao Zilai squinted his eyes and chuckled. They don't need my protection. The children and grandchildren have their own lives. I don't care so much. Chu Li smiled. That's true. Who can protect who? As a member of the martial arts world, who doesn't have enemies? If they're not careful, their entire family will be wiped out, and their descendants will be cut off. The murderous intention in Zhao Zilai's heart became stronger, and his smile became wider. Yes, the Autumn Temple is still better. There are not so many troubles if you don't practice martial arts. But why do you practice martial arts in this world and add so many troubles? They were afraid that they would be killed without being able to resist. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. How can a person who cultivates Buddhism not transcend life and death? The pain of life and death is nothing compared to the pain of the Saha world. Zhao Zilai chuckled. If that's the case, doesn't it mean that all the people in Buddhism don't want to live? Come with a vow. Live in the world, leave when the fate is over, and transcend reincarnation. This is a true monk. Chu Li smiled. It seems that Senior Zhao Zilai doesn't understand the importance of Buddhism. If you have time, Senior Zhao Zilai can go to the Autumn Temple and live for a while to dispel your obsession. Things remain the same, but people have changed. If you need to let go, let go. The smile on Zhao Zilai's face froze. He said coldly, let go. Chu Li smiled. Senior Fu is not an ordinary woman. It's a pity to miss her. But since the fate is over, why can't you let go? Zhao Zilai said coldly. Young Chu, how old are you? How do you know what a thing is? Chu Li shook his head. Those who love deeply are hurt the most. Senior Fu's feelings for Senior Zhao Zilai are over. If you continue to insist, you will only become an enemy. Why bother? The sugar bun in Zhao Zilai's hand was squeezed into a ball. Blue veins were visible. He sneered. You better shut up. Chu Li smiled and lowered his head to drink a mouthful of porridge. His face was full of satisfaction and enjoyment. Zhao Zilai took a deep breath and suppressed his surging, killing intent. Damn you, I'll kill you later. The two of them ate breakfast in silence. Zhao Zilai said, There's nothing to stroll around in the city. I want to enjoy the scenery outside the city. Okay, Chu Li smiled. There's a different kind of scenery outside the city. Green mountains and clear waters. It's a good place. The two of them came to the top of a mountain outside the city. Zhao Zilai stepped on a boulder and looked down at the lush mountain. The green tint was like a veil. He sighed, green mountains and clear waters. It's really a good place to bury one's bones. Chu Li stood on another boulder 2 feet away from him. He smiled and said, It's really a good place to bury one's bones. Zhao Zilai turned around and looked down at him. Young Chu, let's be frank. You know what I want to do? Chu Li nodded. Zhao Zilai smiled. Well, let's exchange a few moves. I know your light body technique is excellent, but you won't watch me go to the Autumn Temple, right? He inquired about Chu Li's background and knew that his light body technique was excellent. He used the Autumn Temple to force him not to escape. Chu Li sighed. Senior Zhao, why bother to get involved in this mess? Senior Fu has already abandoned you. Why you still listen to her disciple? You're courting death. Zhao Zilai roared and threw a punch. Chu Li did not dodge. His purplish golden breath flashed. Taking advantage of the fact that Zhao Zilai had used his full strength and was unable to change his move, Chu Li threw a cold glint from his hand. Bang! He flew out straight away. Zhao Zilai's punch was extremely fierce. It was like a boulder rolling down from the top of the mountain. Chu Li flew backward and took a few steps in the air. He used the superior heart technique of borrowing strength to deflect most of the force. However, he was still heavily imprinted on the stone wall. Zhao Zilai's old force had just dissipated and new force had just arrived. He could only watch as the knife flew from the sky. There was no way to avoid it. He desperately twisted his body, but the flying knife was too fast. He only managed to avoid his chest. Chi! The flying knife broke his chest and shot into the stone wall from behind. Only half of the knife's body was exposed. Zhao Zilai roared and threw another punch. However, it was weak and powerless. All the strength in his body seemed to gush out from the wound. There was very little left, and he could not support this punch. He quickly pressed a few fingers to stop the bleeding. He took out a jade bottle from his arms and was about to take the pill. Chu Li threw his left hand, and another cold glint shot towards Zhao Zilai. Zhao Zilai wanted to avoid it, but he was powerless. He watched as another knife pierced his chest. Blood gushed out like a fountain, and the strength in his body was drained. Chu Li found that the power of his flying knife had increased. Although Zhao Zilai was careless and was too close to him, so the flying knife could hit him. However, if it was the previous flying knife, Zhao Zilai could still avoid it. He floated down from the stone wall and came in front of Zhao Zilai. Senior Zhao, I'm sorry. He slowly stretched out his right index finger and pressed it toward Zhao Zilai. He activated the heart technique of the Tempest Temple's spear finger strike that he learned from Fa Yuan. Zhao Zilai barely wanted to avoid it, but he had no strength in his body. Seeing Chu Li's index finger getting closer and closer, he sneered. Young Chu Li, you dare to kill me? Chu Li smiled. Why not? If you kill me, the Imperial House will never forgive you. Zhao Zilai stared at him without fear. Even your High Duke's public house will be implicated. Chu Li shook his head. Then let's see. He pressed his finger on Zhao Zilai's chest. The finger force of the spear finger strike suddenly leaked out and crushed his heart. His life was instantly cut off. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.